Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Planning and Zoning public hearings for Tuesday, March 28th, 2023. We have 4 public hearings on our agenda tonight. I believe we do have a legal notice. Okay, excuse me, Steve. We're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone would please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. And now I'll turn to the Secretary for the reading of the public notice.
To be published in the Journal Enquirer Friday, March 17th and Thursday, March 23, 2023, South Windsor Planning and Zoning Commission. Notice is hereby given that there will be a public hearing on Tuesday, March 28th at 7 p.m. in the council chambers of the South Windsor Town Hall to consider the following. There are 4 hearings here. Number 1, application 23-02P, Villa of Lebanon, temporary trailer parking terms and conditions. Request for a 2-year temporary, temporary conditional permit for storage of 8 food truck trailers on property located at 797 John Fitch Boulevard with access from Muskoka Road through property at 787 John Fitch Boulevard, General Commercial Zone. Number 2, application 2307P, Boulon Interior Lot Special Exception and Site Plan Modification. Request a modification to the approved interior lot to reduce the size of the lot and change the location of the house for property known as 586 Strong Road, Rural Residential Zone. Number 3, PZC sponsored text amendment, which is to remove a moratorium on truck and freight terminals and warehouses and distribution centers, a number of other changes which have been read in more detail in previous minute, and this is continued from March 14, 2023. Number 4, PZC sponsored text amendment, extend for 4 months Section 1.5 moratorium on new truck and freight terminals and warehouses and distribution centers to Article 1 introduction/districts, continued from March 14, 2023. Copies of the application are on file in the office of the town clerk and/or planning department and online at www.southwindsorct.gov, planning department pages, planning and zoning commission applications. At this hearing, interested persons may be heard and written comments by the public will be received by mail or email. Persons who may require an accommodation can contact staff Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. at 860-644-2511, extension 2329. Bart Pesiconis, Chairman, Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you very much. Our order of business tonight will be first to hear from our applicants, then we'll hear from town staff, then we'll hear from members of the public. First, those in favor of the application, then those against or having questions or concerns, and then we will hear from commissioners. We do have one commissioner absent tonight, Commissioner Foley. So I am going to seek Commissioner Bernstein for Commissioner Foley. He's in Florida enjoying himself, so hope he enjoys. Okay, we have a new system for our audio, so hopefully the public will enjoy it more. If you could, just make sure you turn the button on before or after you speak. If you want to come up, please write your name on the list and then introduce yourself to the commission, and we'll move forward. Our first application is application 23-02P, Villa Lebanon, temporary trailer parking TNC. And I take it you're here to represent the applicant. Yeah, and if you could point the microphone towards your head.
How's that? Good? Can you hear me? A little louder? A little closer?
Maybe raise it up just a little too. Yep. Point it right to you.
New
Yep.
technology, huh? Good evening. My name is Herb May. I'm with Mackey Engineers. I'm representing my client, Villa Lebanon. If it's acceptable to you, Commissioner, I have a few items I'd like to pass out to the commission.
Sure.
Okay.
And if you could, this is a public hearing, so the display should be put towards the public and us also, so. If you'd like, you could put it underneath the TV or whatever, so.
All right. Well, fortunately, one of the exhibits I'm giving you is the first one I have there. The second one is actually the site plan, which you guys should be familiar with since you already received that. So I just thought it might be easier for you guys to take a look at this in front of you and having a look at the board. So the 8.5 by 11 is just an aerial image of the area that we're looking to develop. Oh, you did?
Thank you, sir.
As I previously mentioned, I'm here representing Ali Hussein. He's the proprietor of the Villa Lebanon restaurant on 575 John Fitch Boulevard. He's also the owner of the property that we're looking to get his temporary permit for. The restaurant, they've been here for 15 years, and he's been a resident of the town for 9 years. The need for the permit was he has food trailers that he brings to different fairs and events like that, basically. He was storing them in the back of his restaurant. Apparently, that's not allowed by permit. You need a permit, so that's why we're here to get the permit. So he does own the property there. We're looking to clear a small area so that he can park his trailers there. He does have 2 storage trailers that were on the, excuse me, on the site plan as well. And the only thing that wasn't on the site plan was a small boat that, commercial boat, that, not commercial, I'm sorry, it's a 18-foot boat. Maybe just quickly go around the surrounding zones, basically. We've got commercial use to the northeast. John Fitch Boulevard is on the east, and then the southeast is commercial. And then on the west side, there is industrial, and the southwest side, there's industrial. There is a residential property that is on the northwest corner, but a substantial distance away from where we're developing the site. It's roughly about 650 feet as the crow flies from where we're doing our development to their house, basically. So a significant buffer in between where we're doing some stuff. The overall parcel's 2.25 acres. As you can see from the site plan, actually, I'll just flip this over. So yeah, essentially that's the site plan. You can see the small area where the silt fence is encompassing that area. We look to cut down approximately about a dozen trees, varying in size from 4 inches to about 18 inches inside. There's an existing gravel crushed stone area. We just plan to extend that basically within the tree limits there basically, and that will provide the area for my client to park his food trailers there, the storage trailers, and as well as the boat. He'd like to have access off of Route 5, but you can imagine there's some problems with doing that. You know, if you're getting DOT, another curb cut on Route 5, and so Carl Barisi is the owner of the adjacent lot. He's providing a 25-foot access easement to Mr. Husseini to get access to this site, basically. So the mounted trailers, there's 8 trailers he plans to store, as well as those would be coming and going, basically, Friday through Sunday. He's looking to That would be, let's see, let me just check here. So yeah, 10 o'clock in the morning leave, and then he'd be back around 5 in the afternoon, basically. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So nothing during the week, during rush hour or anything like that. During fair season in the fall, might be coming back a little later when you have night fairs and things like that. So, but yeah, definitely off-peak hours for that stuff. Yeah, I mean, that's, you know, we've got some silt fence around there. I know the town engineer has reviewed our plan, and he made one comment about the grading. We've addressed that. So I really don't think there's much else, basically. It's pretty straightforward.
Okay, does that complete your presentation?
Yes.
Okay, then at this time, I'll turn to our town staff, our Director of Planning, Michelle Lipe.
Thank you. So this is a request for a 2-year temporary and conditional permit for the storage of 8 food truck trailers at 797 John Fitch Boulevard with access from 787 John Fitch Boulevard, actually off of Mascola Road through a 25-foot easement. This lot is currently vacant. It's a heavily treed lot. The applicant's proposing to clear about 11,000 square feet, extend a gravel parking area to accommodate the storage of these trailers. The trailers are about 9 by 20 in size. As indicated, they'd leave in the morning and come back in the evening, particularly during fair season. You know, upon the site visit, I did see the box containers and had them add to the plan as well as the boat. I guess my only concern is that we limit to what we're approving here, that we don't start seeing other trailers and other things start showing up on the site. It will quickly get overcrowded if we start doing that. And there's some, you know, question on maneuvering and getting things in and out there. We want to make sure things are able to stay clear. This application does not meet the threshold of a conservation plan approval. We're not disturbing enough area. However, there are some erosion measures, and we would recommend a bond in the amount of $3,000 for erosion sedimentation measures to ensure that during the stabilization of the site. The wording of the temporary conditional permit is that temporary conditional permits may be granted by the commission for a period not to exceed 2 years. Such approval may be given after a public hearing if, in the judgment of the commission, the public convenience and welfare will be substantially served and the appropriate use of neighboring property will not be substantially or permanently injured, and traffic and other hazards will not result from such use. If this application is approved, again, this would be a 2-year permit, and the applicant would need to return in 2 years for reapproval, or hopefully he'll get to the point where he's developing the site with a new restaurant if that's his goal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, I am going to ask the public if anyone has a cell phone. I was just reminded, my mind dinging up here. If you could turn it to vibrate or shut it off, we would appreciate it. So at this time, I'll turn to the public. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of this application? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none, is there anyone who would like to speak against or have questions or concerns? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none, I will turn to commissioners. Commissioner Viteri.
No questions.
Commissioner Cavagnaro.
Yes, thank you. I do have a few questions I do want to ask. Looking at the details on the planning department report, and I guess throughout the presentation, I'm still left with some questions. I see in point 2, it highlights that, and I'll quote it, typically the trailers would leave the site around 10 in the morning and arrive back at 5 p.m. Is it possible for trucks to operate or outside of the lot before 10 or after 5 o'clock? So, for example, leaving around 7 or 8 in the morning or coming back after 5 p.m., or do we know strictly it's going to be 10 in the morning and back at 5 p.m.?
So, yeah, to address that question, these are fairly small trailers. They're pulled by an F-350 Super Duty, so we're not talking, I want to make sure that's clear, that we're talking about bigger. That's the time period that my client, Ali, has told me that they would be operating from. So is your concern that they might not be with, you know, are you considering making approval just at those times? Because like I said, there are certain times that they might leave a little earlier or have to come back a little later depending on, you know, the circumstances, so.
All right, yeah, I mean, there's no concerns. I merely ask these questions because, you know, I'd like to know some of the details before we approve it. So I guess some of the other questions I did have, I'm looking at the, I think, higher up above, and I guess The other question I had is, how often are trucks going to be coming in and out? And I know it says store up to 8 food truck trailers. Is that going to be one trip leaving and one trip back, or is it going to be back and forth, within every single hour, for example?
Okay.
Okay, excuse me?
Yeah.
Ali, if you would like to speak, we would need you up at the microphone, please. If you could, Ali, please direct your
All right.
questions or comments to the
Sure,
chair.
sure.
Thank you.
So, fairs, it's not every day, every week, every weekend, So I do it once a week, one fair, 2 fair, something like that. But it doesn't go all of them at once and coming at once, no.
Yep.
Good?
Okay, I'll circle back to that, because I was also curious about the lot itself. It says storage for 8 food truck trailers. So with that being said, I'm curious, what security is going to look like, if it's going to be, a fence.
We're
for
not
example.
storing anything over there. In reality, I clean them behind my restaurant and I park them, only parking. We're not doing anything over there. We just park.
It's a secure trailer,
Yes,
correct?
yes.
Okay. Just for the record, if you could introduce yourself to the commission?
Okay, my name is Ali Al Husseini. Okay, I'm the
That's-
owner of Villa of Lebanon.
Yep.
Falafel, hummus, baba ganoush, grape leaf, gyros, chicken.
Thank you.
See how I make them that.
Thank you, Ali.
All right, thank you.
I do have one other quick question. I'm curious if this lot is going to have, planned lights at all.
License? Light?
Lights.
No.
So down the line, you may.
No.
Okay.
Because we don't have water, we don't have electricity over there. Just only,
Okay, I was just asking
Thank
because I was curious.
thank you.
I will say the abutting property building does have some pack lighting on the wall, so there will be some type of lighting back there, and there also is some security cameras on that building as well, so,
Okay, good to know. Thank you very much. That's all the questions I have so far.
okay, thank you.
Commissioner LeBlanc,
I have no comments, thank you.
Commissioner Wagner,
Thank you. I'd like to call your attention to your drawing C 1.0, which is the one you have up there. And in the lower right-hand corner is a picture of where the trailers are going to go. And there's a indication of the tree line, and you have 2 trailers somehow in the trees, is the way I read that diagram. So if you can
Yes.
explain that.
Absolutely. So those are the 2 storage trailers that we meant. The clearing is just so that they can maneuver the trucks and the trailers. These are just underneath the tree canopies, basically. So it's a storage box, basically.
Okay.
Then those are stationary, those do not get moved, basically. That's just storage, basically. Then it's storage for bigger events like kitchen equipment and stuff like that is what he stores in there for,
so that's like a Connex box? or-
Correct.
Okay.
yeah, 8x40 Connex box, 2 of them next to each other. And those
So
are
if-
under
if-
the tree canopies.
To get access to there, is a room between the trees? Is that how you're getting in there, or how are you
The
getting?
doors are in the front.
Mm-hmm.
The doors are,
Yeah, I'm just showing the tree line is like. Okay. All right. That was my only question, thank you.
does that address your question?
Okay.
Okay.
Commissioner Dexter,
No comments.
Commissioner Carey,
No comments.
Commissioner Bernstein.
So this is a 2-year temporary permit.
That's correct.
Is the plan to come back in 2 years for another 2-year temporary permit? If I stay alive. And we hope you do.
Ali, just for the record, if you're going to be speaking, please step up to the microphone. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Okay, no, but I mean, the story, I hate to say that. I was planning to build a restaurant over there, very nice sit-down restaurant. But we have an issue with my sister Michelle about the traffic lights, okay? And they asked me, I
Could you,
spent,
a little closer to the microphone, please?
okay.
I'm not
I
getting
don't know
any
if
of
you are
this.
aware of this issue, okay? And I know, I've been in the town, God bless, you know, pay over $50,000 a year taxes. The question is, that I want to build my own restaurant. Okay, it's too small the where I am. And I try to build very nice sit-down restaurant. That's why I bought the land. The question is, there is a traffic light. And, you know, Michelle say she prefer not to enter from John Fitch Boulevard. She want to enter from, like, my friend Carl, you know, next door. So we made easement, you know, to pass the trailer. But eventually, in 2 years, I hope we can build a restaurant and you all can sit down and eat and bring your family. It's good for the town. I don't know if I have customers here from me. One. Only one? My God, my God. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I love you all like my mother-in-law.
I guess that's all I have.
Okay. I just had one question, and I appreciate, you know, the knowledge, that it might be another 2 years or whatever afterwards. But I'm a little bit concerned if how much of this is going to be like seen from Route 5. And if we did do another 2-year TNC permit after this 2-year, I would like it considered possibly putting some abrevieties up to block the parking lot some, so you don't have the view in the winter from Route 5 as much. So that's just a consideration for this.
For the future.
The third and fourth year possibly, okay?
Okay.
Other than
that's
that,
fine. It's pretty thick through there now, even in the winter. I don't know if you noticed it, but.
I did, I drove by yesterday.
Okay.
But we'll talk about that in the
Point
future.
taken, point taken.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, commissioners, is there any reason to keep the public hearing open? Hearing none, staff? And applicants all set? Then we'll close the public hearing at 7:22. And this is on our agenda later for action. Our next item, where the heck is my, oh, here it is. Next item is application 23-07P Poulin interior lot. Do we have somebody here to represent the applicant?
Good evening. My name is Tim Kuhn. I'm a professional engineer with J.R. Russo and Associates, here tonight representing Danny and Liza Legary. They own the property at 586 Strong Road, which is zoned RR. And in 2007, this property was approved for a special exception and site plan for a 7.7 acre interior lot. The plan over here shows the entire lot, which includes the access strip from Strong Road into the interior lot. And both the orange and the green area were the original lot that was approved in 2007. And we are here tonight to request a modification in order to reconfigure the interior lot line and reduce the size of the lot from 7.7 acres to 3.85 acres, which would be the orange. So we're taking the green area, which is the remaining land, which would be conveyed and combined with the Poulin property to the west, and that would leave the 3.38, or I'm sorry, the 3.85 acres as the reconfigured interior lot. We have modified the site plan to accommodate the smaller lot size. As you can see, this was provided in your plan set as well. It shows the new house location, which is obviously closer to the access strip, as well as the location of the access drive, the house, the septic and utilities, the silt fence that would be provided at the down gradient of construction, and the screening, proposed screening along the eastern and southern property boundaries. Despite the reconfigured smaller area of the lot, it still meets, as reconfigured, all of the minimum requirements, including area coverage and building setbacks. And it is a fairly straightforward application, so that's the end of my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll turn to our Director of Planning, Michelle Leip.
Thank you. So as indicated, this is a request to modify the special exception that was granted back in 2007 for 2 interior lots at the time. It was a subdivision approval with interior lots in the rural residential zone. So the original lot that we're talking about was 5.9 acres and the second was 2 acres. With this new proposal, the western lot is being reduced to approximately 3 acres and the remaining land is being combined with the property to the west at 432 Strong Road to be made part of that lot. The new lot, as redesigned, does meet the requirements for interior lots in the RR zone. It will be serviced by well as a septic system. The final design of the septic system will be subject to the town sanitarian's approval. This proposed lot is accessed through a common driveway that has already been built and accepted by the town. It's not a public road, but it is a private common driveway. Built in 2009, and it met the fire requirements at that time. With this proposal, there'll be a stub that'll be added. That'll be a common area for a fire truck to turn around if necessary. The applicant's proposing a combination of Norway spruce and eastern red cedar to provide screening between the existing houses and the interior lot. There was original plans differently with the original plans, 15 years ago or whatever, but this is what the proposal is tonight. There are regulated wetlands on the property. Wetlands heard it and approved it back in 2007. At that time, there were some landscaping requirements that were associated with the pond, which are no longer going to be a part of this interior lot. Any bonds we held were released many years ago. So for all practical purposes, there are no wetlands activities associated with this. We would note that the representative house footprint is shown when we approve an interior lot. It's also a site plan approval. And we're approving a location of the house as shown on the plan. In the event that plan changes radically, it would have to return back to this commission for approval. And again, the reason for that is so that anybody that had any interest in it from a screening perspective or, in some lot behind them would know where the house was going to be. If this application is approved, the planning department does request that a new deed be filed combining the remaining land that's being removed from this lot with 432 Strong Road. And then normal building permit procedures would be required. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, I'll turn to the public. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of this application? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none, is there anyone who would like to speak against or have questions or concerns? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none, I'll turn to commissioners. Commissioner Bernstein.
If you could step up to the mic. This may have been covered by either you or Director Light, but maybe I missed it. So on the agenda, it makes a reference to changing the location of the house, and I think I missed what that reference is to. So help me through that.
Okay. Actually, I believe Michelle did cover that. When, for an interior lot, when you approve that, you're also approving the site plan, which includes the location of the lot. So the house location that was approved on the interior lot back in 2007 is changing with our reconfigured lot here. So we're, in addition to getting approval of the new lot size, we are getting an approval of the actual house location as part of this site plan approval.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Commissioner Carey.
So, I think that this like sloping area from the house, is that the driveway? Like,
There is the portable mic working, or?
that,
Okay.
is that the driveway?
That's,
And is that gonna be, what is that gonna be made of?
the driveway actually already exists.
Oh, okay.
There's an existing driveway that comes up through to serve that area. I believe it's, shown as
Yeah, so
gravel.
there's basically a vacant lot, and then this is the second vacant lot that's being modified. But the driveway was put in many years ago, not had houses built.
Okay, okay. That's my only question. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Dexter,
No questions.
Commissioner Wagner?
Yeah, I'm also trying to understand what we're looking at. So, working from Strong Road, there's a property belonging to the Kanachi Family Investment Company, and that's vacant? And then the Diamond Homes LLC, is that also vacant?
They are both vacant.
Okay,
So the Kanachi, though, is just remaining land, so that is not a building lot, that's just land.
okay,
This next one over is a building lot, and then this is the second building lot. So the original approval had 2 building lots. It was just the other one's a much larger piece of property that's being reduced.
okay. And then there's this property owned by the Poulins. How is access given to that property?
If you're referring to the green area on the west port, or
Yes.
west portion, that's actually going to be conveyed and combined with his existing property, which is accessed from the road to the west.
That's accessed by Tummel Road, so it's accessed from a property, from a private drive west of where this access.
Okay, so we're not seeing that whole property there, and I'd be able to come in there? Okay. That's all I had, thank you.
Commissioner LeBlanc?
No comment, thank you.
Commissioner Cavagnero?
No comment, thank you.
Commissioner Viteri?
I'm just curious, the roughly 4 acres now that'll be moved over to 432 Strong Road, there's nothing being proposed to be done with that? That's just vacant land that'll be
Just
moved over?
vacant land at this time, yes.
Okay, great, thanks. That was it.
Michelle, I just had one question. I was a little unclear, and I didn't hear how you worded it. But your number 6, where it notes a representative house footprint is shown if this application is approved, and then I lose it when an actual house plan is submitted.
So I know that their client is the one that's going to submit a house plan, but a lot of times it's just a proposal. And so at the time of the actual house submission, if it's different than that, that's when we would take it back to you, so. yeah.
Okay.
I don't
That's
think
what I
that-
thought, but
Yeah, I don't think it'll be the case in this situation, but just in the event that something
Yep.
does change.
Okay, fine. Commissioners, is there any reason to keep this public hearing open? Staff, applicant, all set? Okay. If there's no other questions, we'll close this public hearing at 7:33 PM. And it is on our agenda for action later tonight, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Our next application is the continuation of the PCC-sponsored text amendment. So I'll turn to Michelle, see if there's an update.
No, just wanted to let the commission know, I did provide you with a document that kind of highlighted what we heard at our last public hearing, trying to give you what the public comments were, some of the commission comments were, some of what the staff feedback is. Again, just to help you with the discussion points. So really, I have nothing more at this point. I would just be interested to hear what our public has to say tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. So at this time, this is a public hearing. I will turn to members of the public. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of this application or this text amendment? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none, is there anyone who would like, Commissioner Damali? You'll be next, sir.
This is regarding the overall industrial amendments, correct? This part of the hearing? Okay. I'm not going to reiterate what I said last hearing.
For the record?
Oh, for the record, Peter Damali, 21 Jeffrey Drive, Design Professionals, President and CEO. And I will sign in, excuse me.
Thank you.
A few things that may be of interest to you as you're going through this comprehensive revision to your regulations with respect to industrial, commercial development that I think may be germane to what you're looking at. First of all, I think if you're going to go into more special exception uses, the first thing you need to do is review your 14 review criteria. They're about the same, I think largely unchanged for over 20 years, 30 years, maybe 40 years. You might want to take a look at those. Because these are more subjective as opposed to something permitted by use that you decide as a commission on in a particular zone and what's allowed there objectively, and here's what you got to do. You meet all these criteria, you should be entitled to an approval, as opposed to adding all the special exception review criteria. So if you're going to do that, requiring automatically by state law a public hearing, which means more meetings, you should take a look at those review criteria and concentrate on those first. I think that's the first thing you do. You take a look at these. These are old. Some of them are redundant. And I think you should take a look at that, especially in view of some of the testimony at many hearings you've had over the years from attorneys for and against applications. You should take a look at these and what's allowed based on case law. So I think you should consult with your town attorney on these. I know, for example, there was the commission turned down a senior residence development, which was a special exception application. And main reason for it, and this is years ago, it was a watershed decision for on Strong Road. None of the members here were on the commission at the time, to my recollection, but it was turned down. And one of the major reasons it was turned down because it wasn't consistent with the plan of conservation development. Well, you know what? The judge ruled in that case that the plan of conservation development is a guide. It's not your zoning regulations. So whatever guidelines within that, you need to incorporate them into zoning, or you don't, or it's invalid. So the judge overturned that case. So the development went forward, and it's been built, but you should be cautious how you do that. So I would review this with legal counsel as to what's allowed and what isn't under case law in the 40 years or whatever since these things were primarily adopted. That would be the first thing I recommend you take a look at. So you're comfortable with these and you think they're legally valid. That's one thing. Another thing is, I think you should be aware of the fact that if you get into special exception uses, you can cause problems if there's an existing facility. So what's going to happen, I'm going to give you an example. There's a gentleman behind me, Jim Aldrich from Aldrich Construction. He and I and another Alan Lamson from FLB Architecture, we teamed up to help out Midwest Food Bank New England. Full disclosure, I'm on their board of directors. We just finished our first 12 months of operations over there, but we had a 55,000 square foot building in Manchester. It was used as a warehouse for Allied Printing and Mustangs Unlimited. We wanted to use that for distribution of food for free. Right now, it's 120 nonprofits get food from this entity. We had to go through a process because the prior uses, it was listed as a special exception use, a warehouse use. Because those prior uses were not granted a special exception, the town ruled that it needed to go through a special exception just for the warehouse for this nonprofit to distribute millions of dollars in food every year to charities, eventually getting to people with food insecurity. We had to go through a 3 or 4 month process at least. It cost thousands of dollars to go through that process just so they could sign a lease, and then they had to have all the problems that Mr. Aldrich had, which was to order all the parts and stuff, the steel parts and everything else to renovate the building. Everything was delayed. They could have leased it to somebody else in the interim. And that kind of thing comes up. So I think it's important for you to clarify that if this, right now you have in your regulations, any manufacturing or distribution center over 40,000 square feet, if I recall correctly, warehouses, that type of thing, if they're already existing, and somebody wants to go in there and put an addition on one, they just put a couple 100,000 square feet on Aldi, does everything, at what point does it kick into a special exception? So all these warehouses and distribution facilities, and large manufacturing facilities for that matter, were previously approved by this commission and built and operate. So at what point did this kick in? Did they have to go for a special exception? If they put on a 40,000 square foot addition, or they put on a 5,000 square foot addition, if it kicks it over a certain size, the buildings, most of them are, a lot of these big buildings are already over 40,000 square feet. So every time they come in for a modification, do they have to go through a special exception first and thereafter, or is it only one time, or is it never? And your review criteria for those uses Many of them are such that they have to be 500 feet, the property line, 500 feet from a residential zone. If you think about Aldi, which is one of our biggest taxpayers in town, the big facility up on Rice Street, that is within 500 feet of a residential zone. Does that mean you can't do anything there? I just question. Can you even render approval for a special exception because it was approved as a permitted use? So you have all these facilities around town, and if it's going to require a special exception for an expansion, at what point does that apply? So I suggest you talk to legal counsel about that. So at what point do people have to come in? And they're going to be, if they require a special exception, there's going to be a lot of frustrated people if they try to put a small addition on or a good-sized addition, because they didn't have to when they established that use. So do you have to, or are they completely grandfathered so this does not apply, it only applies to new buildings? I think you need to evaluate that and make sure you're confident before you go forward with respect to that. Another thing is economic development. If you read this afternoon's paper, the proposed increase in spending is over 8%, just shy of 9%. It's in this afternoon's JI for the town budget. Every town needs economic development. When DST Output came in, which is now Broadridge, I was part of a team that evaluated 3 local sites. They wanted to go on Governor's Highway, by the way, and I told them that didn't work. We ended up at 125 Ellington Road down by I-291 on the south side there. Had it been that it was going to be a special permit use, they very well might not have invested all the time and energy on this facility. They're competing with sites in Boston and Atlanta. They came to decide Hartford was a place, and South Windsor was a great place to locate. Had it been that the subjectivity of a special exception use, where it's not a guarantee you're going to get approval, they may not have come here. And some other uses that you have here in town may not have come. So you just bear in mind as you go forward, if you're going to get special exceptions for all these uses, that when you do a special exception, all of a sudden it's a gray area. Instead of the commission deciding what uses are there, all of a sudden there's, oh, those uses, however, they're all the review criteria that apply to this. So you may not be able to get an approval. And developers and tenants, building owners, are fully aware that there's a huge difference between something permitted by right and something that has to go through a whole bunch of review criteria and with an element of subjectivity. So I think you should, objective criteria or subjective. You should balance that and be very careful about how you approach that. Other facilities in town that, you say anything over 40,000 square feet in industrial zone, I believe, manufacturing even, would require a special exception. So what about New Way Tobacco? They're putting on another 5,000 square feet or so. Do they have to come back to you? They never had a special exception. Do they have to come back to you for a special exception? You should understand that. Because there's a big tax base in this town. This town has a very large, I think it's over 20 million square feet of industrial tax base. They're the backbone of your commercial base in town, which offsets the taxes for the residential base, the homeowners. So you need to think about what impact you're having on the existing businesses through the imposing a special exception process to a use that did not require it previously. So I think you should carefully look through that and see who you want to make come forward for special exceptions when they're already established uses, already buildings. They've been in town for some time, and many of them contribute greatly to this town. So you have a blanket change at the end of table 411A, permitted uses, commercial and industrial, that you require all buildings greater than 40,000 square feet to become a special exception use. It's a blanket, if I'm interpreting it correctly, it's a blanket statement, regulation. And then also, all parking lots over 50 cars be a special exception. Why on earth would you have to do a special exception for a parking lot over 50 cars? 50-car parking lot is pretty small. It's pretty standard. You lay it out, you know the size is required, impervious coverage, interior landscaping, other requirements that this commission has, and it's reviewed by the town staff, planning director, the town engineer. Why do you have to impose a public hearing on yourself and do that? And one final comment, and that's it. When I was director of planning for this town, this was a long time ago, 37 years ago, I left the position. We met, this commission, and I was there at virtually every meeting, We met no fewer than 40 nights a year. It's between 40 and 46 nights a year. Does that mean 4 times almost every month? And I think because some of the gentlemen or executives at CBT, the big bank in Connecticut, down Hartford, they wanted to start later, have dinner with their family and stuff, so we started later. I think we often start at 8 o'clock. But we had 40 to 46 nights while I was here as Director of Planning for a 7-year period. When you start getting into special exceptions, it automatically requires a public hearing. It also will invariably have a debate on whether or not you meet those subjective criteria, those 14 I referred to earlier. You will have more meetings and more longer meetings if you get into applications. More and more applications require a special exception. So the question is, do you as a commission decide what's going to go in a zone and have objective criteria, and they meet that, such as impervious coverage and setbacks, things like that, and which uses? Or do you add the element of special exception review criteria and a public hearing format and lengthen the workload on the commission and staff and the hours you'll be putting into this? Just bear it in mind. I think you should seriously consider that and what impact it has overall on the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Apologize for not getting up quickly enough the last time. Brian Wiley, 954 Main Street here in town. I'll be brief. I simply want to thank the commission for taking the time to look at the regulations. I have looked over the proposal, and there's a lot of changes to the zoning regulations in there. I appreciate that you're recognizing the changes in how buildings get used, how, we used to just have freight terminals and warehouses, and now there's multiple classes of these things proposed in the regulation changes, which I think is appropriate. As someone who's lived in the town for 23 years and plans to live here at least that long yet to go, I'm glad to see that we are updating our regulations to try and make this a place where we want to keep living. So thank you.
Thank you. Brian, could you please sign in? Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of this application? Please step forward. And this is a text change. It's not necessarily an application, but yeah.
Okay. Kathy Kerrigan, 1838 Main Street. First of all, I'd like to really start with a heartfelt thank you to all of the commissioners for approving the moratorium on new warehouses and distribution centers. And I would like to thank Michelle and her staff for helping me get through the application process, and then for working with you all to come up with the changes that you're proposing. I'm not a zoning person, and it was tough to sort of wade through what the changes are and to try to, figure them out, especially just from a resident's point of view. But I'm really happy about some of the changes that you're proposing. It's great that we've got clearer definitions now. What's the difference between a warehouse and a distribution center and a freight terminal? I especially like the intensity rankings that Chair Pasakonis included in his PowerPoint presentation, and I'm hoping something like that could be incorporated into the regs. The restatement of the purpose and intent of the industrial zone was very helpful. A fresh look at buffers and screening, helpful. Changes to setbacks, very welcome. A more detailed section on traffic requirements, although I'm still not very clear on when traffic studies will be needed for future projects. And I'm really talking about new projects coming to town, not projects that are already here, which Peter Damali was addressing. I also noticed an inclusion of performance standards regarding the environmental impact of industrial development and use, and sort of an attempt to connect noise pollution and air pollution directly to that use. It's a step in the right direction, for sure. enhanced landscaping standards with plantings used as buffers and for visual, noise, and other pollutants to protect humans and human activities. I like that wording. And a special appendix for buffer and landscaping designs regarding air quality, noise control, and visual screening. These are things that really matter to residents. The changes in setbacks, buffers, and screening are all really welcome, and they will help protect residential neighborhoods, but only to a degree. They seem actually quite modest to me and not worthy of the outcry we're hearing from developers. And sadly, noise, light, and diesel pollution associated with new warehouses remains essentially unaddressed. And although they may fall outside of your jurisdiction, they remain a cause for real concern. Consider this. Every new warehouse, distribution center, trucking terminal built in South Windsor brings with it much broader implications that extend way beyond its very large footprint. The cumulative impact of noise, added truck traffic, and diesel particulate follows us all over town, out on our roadways, into our residential neighborhoods, adding new stressors daily. None of us need that. Each new warehouse generates a new army of trucks, literally. They disrupt our sleep at night, our weekend bike rides, our drives across town to buy groceries and run errands. They drown out bird songs. Their lights dim our views of the stars. We all suffer. My request for a moratorium was motivated by changes I noticed in town. And at the time of my presentation 1 year ago, there were 7 megastructures here in South Windsor: Aldi's, FedEx, Mobis, Vistar, Coca-Cola, Home Depot, and the empty Amazon. Those 7 cover permanently more than 283 acres of land, much of it South Windsor farmland, with 2,247,000 square feet of storage space. That's 35 football fields. And there are more coming. Talbot Lane's being decided in the courts. The Kennedy Road application squeaked in just under the moratorium went into effect, and a new storage facility on Ellington Road is on the horizon. At what point do we say enough? Surely there are other better ways to use our remaining industrial areas. And lots of the questions that I raised in my presentation last year remain unanswered. Do we have an economic development professional working with the town to explore alternatives and alternative uses? How are our major roadways, Sullivan Avenue, Ellington Road, Oakland Road, Buckland Road, handling the increases in traffic? Are we using our industrial land to best advantage? Do we offer incentives to developers to take over abandoned properties and/or existing structures? What's the current status of our established warehouses? Jobs created, truck traffic generated, taxes collected? I don't know the answer to these questions. Are we using tax abatements to best advantage? And do we have a written policy on when tax abatements should be considered? Do we provide adequate staffing in the town planner's office for our planning and zoning commissioners so that you can become active planners rather than reactive reviewers of applications? What's happening with retention ponds built to handle water and water runoff? Are they being properly maintained and monitored? Do our regulations adequately address literally hundreds of thousands of square feet of new impermeable ground cover? My neighbors and I would tell you no. What are we giving up for our warehouses and distribution centers, and what are we getting back? Bottom line, do we want to be a warehouse town? I want to remind the commissioners, as well as the mayor and the town council members and the Economic Development Commission and our town manager, that we're relying on all of you to work together and to keep us foremost in your thinking. Yes, we need to balance development with quality of life. Yes, we need a strong tax base to support the many wonderful things about South Windsor. How we reconcile the two is your job and your challenge. I'm hoping that the town's new plan of conservation and development currently underway will provide some timely direction for the people who lead us. I wonder out loud if the town has a strategic plan or is in the process of building one. Every organization I've worked for during my 40-year career has had both a mission statement and a long-range strategic plan, something everyone can point to and base decisions on. I don't see a common vision for the town, one shared by all of our town leaders, especially regarding our finite resources. I urge this commission to consider extending the moratorium for another 4 months before finalizing changing to the zoning regs. These regulations go a long way to protect the town and the humans who live in it from immediate and/or longer-term harm caused by development, commercial, industrial, and residential. They represent the town and the town's residents. Zoning regulations need to be clear, strong, and fair, and able to stand on their own. We must live with the decisions that have been made in the past. There's no going back. All we can do is look ahead, learn from our experiences and our mistakes, and try to forge a better way. Once again, thank you all for your commitment, your expertise, and your energy. Chair Pasakonis, tonight I am gifting you a hard copy of my presentation with speaking notes. It's easy reading, and I encourage you to look it over and share it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. If you could give it to staff, and they will copy it, and it'll be put on the web for our records.
And I'm sorry it's not a bottle of red wine.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of this application?
I will. Hello. I would also like to thank you for all the hard work. I can only imagine the time that got put into this. And Kathy said pretty much.
If you could, for the
record.
record.
I'm sorry, Jessica Vogelsang, 79 Hilton Drive.
Thank you.
So thank you all for all the time. And Kathy has said pretty much everything that I had intended to say. So I would just like to really implore you to consider the 4-month extension. I know that there's a lot of people who would like to learn more about what the recommendations mean, both the broad strokes as well as the nuances that this could have on future. With Peter saying that some of these things hadn't been done for 40 years, I would hate to think that people didn't understand what the decisions they were making now, and I'm not talking about you, I'm talking the rest of us, might be in 10, 15, 20 years. We don't do this as a job. I admire Kathy's tenacity and time. I'm not retired. I appreciate so much the fact that she decided to donate this much of her retired time to learning about all of this. But I think another 4 months would allow people to become more understanding of what the codes are, what the impacts are, what the economic development impacts would be. And I really think if you want to invite the public, and I think the public really does want to become more involved in their local government and in what's going on in their town and to feel as though they have a voice. It's very hard to do that if you're not retired, you're not in the profession of the committee that you're coming to talk to, and you've got 2 weeks or a month to try to read and research and figure it all out. So I agree with Kathy. I really like some of the things that are in this. I would like to understand them better and have a little longer time to be able to research some of the nuances that might happen. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Please step forward. And the lady in the back with the orange jacket will be next.
Hi, Daryl Ramsey, 1688 Main Street. It's no pen. Thanks. I just had an observation that I wanted to share with the commission. I, like everybody else, I thank you very much for the work you've done. I live on Main Street, as I said. Coming out of Main Street, entering Sullivan Avenue to cross Route 5, at the light, I sit there for quite a while, and I watch the tractor trailers coming from the south on Route 5, making that less than 90-degree turn around the corner into 5 lanes of traffic, mind you. And I sit there and say, holy cow. I mean, the stuff that's happening right in front of my eyes about tractor trailers missing cars and missing people on bikes, and yeah, it's a bike path. I said, what? Talbot Lane is being considered without any consideration of the school buses coming from that same southerly exposure on Route 5 onto Governor's Highway, which is this wide with railroad tracks, and a school bus depot right there. So every school bus is stopping to cross the railroad tracks with their doors open to listen for the sound of the train coming along the empty tracks. How many tractor trailers is it going to take to ram into the back of school buses stopped at that intersection? And I'm only bringing all this up because apparently that wasn't considered or didn't have to be considered in a decision like the approval of the Talbot Lane warehouse. It seems preposterous to me. How could this happen? I don't know. So I'm looking for answers like that, and I agree with everything that everybody has said here tonight. I'm not really here to complain, but I don't think that was ever looked at. And from my perspective, sitting at that light, watching the trucks come around into 5 lanes around that corner, I wonder how can this go? How is it going to work? That's my only question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lady in the orange jacket.
I'm not a very good speaker, but.
We think I am.
Hi, my name's Edna Schlein, and I live in Peachbrook. I moved here in 1992, and I bike ride all over town. And my issue and problem is a lot of times, like, the tractor trailers, there's so many, I get, like, they get so close to me on the bicycle, I can't get out of Peachbrook a lot of times. There's so many trucks going by. You could hear the trucks late at night going by Peachbrook all the time. A lot of times they're going not the speed limit, they're going over the speed limit. They're cutting through Strong Road. I'm on my bicycle on Strong Road, and they're cutting through Strong Road, and I tell them, why don't you take Route 5? I just think that it's getting ridiculous. I see all these trucks at least 15 times a day going down Sullivan back and forth. You have Coca-Cola, you have Amazon, you have Aldi's. I mean, there's like 10 or 12 different trucking companies going up and down Sullivan all day long. So that's the whole thing. I think that they need to stop building warehouses for trucks, or they need to change the route and have a different exit for them so they're not going up and down and all around the town of South Windsor. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in favor of this application? Please step forward.
Hi, my name is Johanna Perkins, and I live at 1008 Main Street. I have 3 teenagers that are all learning to drive, either now or in the next couple of years. There are wonderful things about Main Street, but one thing about it is you can't go anywhere without crossing Route 5. Teaching a teenager to drive, you feel like your heart is in your throat a lot of times. Teaching a teenager to drive when they have to cross Route 5 to get anywhere, your heart really is in your throat a lot of time. Trucks are running those lights regularly. They are driving well above the speed limit, and they're running the lights by seconds. They just can't stop in time for the yellow, or they don't try. Trying to explain to a 16-year-old how long you have to sit at a green light before it's actually safe to go. Trying to explain to a 13-year-old who wants to bike anywhere that he simply may not, because it is not safe for him to leave his neighborhood on a bicycle. These are parenting decisions I never thought I would make when I moved to town 23 years ago. Obviously, Route 5 is a busy road, but it has changed significantly. And I am someone that has to cross it every day to go anywhere. So I can tell you the changes are significant, and we have to consider the safety of our drivers and our children. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of this text amendment to the regulations? Please step forward. Hearing up.
David Raymond, 1837 Main Street. A couple of things. These warehouses have been in our town for quite some time now, and there's a bunch of them. They cover a great deal of the square footage of our town. I'd be curious to know, on a square foot basis, how much tax revenue they actually develop and how many jobs they create compared to most of the other kinds of industries and things we have in town. Since we started getting a whole lot of those, one thing that's happened is a lot of manufacturing is coming back to America. South Windsor has always been a great manufacturing place. It still is. There are skills here that aren't in other places. We have a great opportunity to attract more of those kinds of businesses, but if all of our best industrial land is buried under these big things that don't generate that much tax revenue, some of them are indeed the biggest taxpayers. They're also the biggest land coverers, so I'd like you to consider that. Another aspect of the amount of land that they cover is the amount of rain that runs off of all the roofs and paved surfaces when it rains, which lately it does. We live downstream, literally, of the large development on Sullivan Avenue and Route 5. The retention pond at that facility has been all the way up since I can remember. There are some problems with the drainage. The stream that runs through our farm is eroding incredibly. It's a big problem. We're going to have to be starting to move some dirt around to keep it from breaking out of its banks. It'd be great if that was looked into. It's a great example of how a lot of times promises are made about what's going to happen with these places, and the reality is very different. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of this text amendment to the regulations? Please step forward.
Hi, Cherish Lassay at 1832 John Fitch Boulevard. Yes, that is Route 5. I live very close to the Sullivan Avenue intersection. I have walls that are cracking from the trucks. I would like to see something in this application more about noise, specifically dumpsters. They come at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, all night. I live very close to Commerce Way. There are 4 businesses that are not all on the same schedule for those dumpster pickups. They will pick up the dumpster and they will slam it to the ground. They will pick it up again and they will slam it to the ground. The other night, one dumpster, it happened 8 times. 8 times. It was shaking my house. It was shaking me. It was 2:30 in the morning. I do not sleep. Jake breaks are killing my sleep. I sleep with earplugs. I am considering getting noise panels in my bedroom. That's really bad. There's nothing I can do to move. I'm pretty sure the value of my house has gone down considerably as soon as FedEx came in and Hyundai and Mobis. We've lived there for 21 years. It has changed. Life in South Windsor has changed. I went to high school here. It is not the same. I actually miss the barns. I miss the land. But I think our way of life with the noise is really, really affecting a lot of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of this text amendment to the regs? Please step forward.
My name is Gerald Bittner. I live at 24 Cody Circle. I've been to quite a number of meetings in the last couple of years, and I've heard several commissioners talk about how when they've been campaigning, the noise is so bad they have trouble talking to people in their own yards. I've lived here almost 29 years. When I moved here, that was never an issue. I heard a gentleman earlier tonight talk about how he thought 500-foot separation was excessive. I don't think it's enough. I've noticed no developer lives right next to one of these warehouses, and there's a reason why they don't, because they don't want it either. Why should we have to put up with it? Parking lots. Nobody wants to live next to a parking lot. 50 cars is still quite a number of cars. Nobody wants to live next to that. If developers don't want to live next to it, why should residents of neighborhoods have to live next to it? Nobody wants a 40-foot tall warehouse towering over their house. Nobody wants the noise. I think your regulations are a good start. I'd like to see them even stronger. I think if you talk to the majority of residents of this town, they would be happy if another warehouse was never built in this town. Almost 9% is proposed for the tax hike. Obviously, we're not getting that much economic development tax dollar-wise out of these warehouses because it's one of the largest tax increases I've seen of any town around here. So the tax abatements must be very excessive that these businesses are being given for the number of warehouses that have been built in the last couple of years. I do want to thank you for the time and effort you put into looking at this and working on the new regulations. I think the majority of people in our town would like to see them even stronger. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of this text amendment to the regulations? Please step forward. Lady in the green.
I'm Teodora Rotaru. I am owner of one of the parcels that is in an industrial zone, and
Could
I
you
work
please introduce yourself?
Yes, Teodora Rotaru.
Okay.
I work in real estate, property management specifically. From what I hear, people talking here, I see a common denominator. People are very, very concerned about big business taking over the town. One problem that we have with the current legislation is that it encourages big business to take over the town because there are many very subjective aspects of the legislation and who has money to pay to fight the subjectiveness of the legislation. Big business does. The little small business owner cannot afford to come in front of a commission for every one little tenant that they would put into a commercial industrial business building. And if we look just in the table of the permitted uses, permitted by right uses in the table for industrial zone, there's one permitted by right use, which is the agricultural forestry operation, cultivated lands and animals. All the other permitted uses are with a site plan or through special exemption. That means a small business owner, a small industrial property owner will have to come to the town for any use in their property that actually today these uses are actually happening in these properties. And we have to present a site plan. We have to make sure that each use that should be by right afforded in an industrial zone, because that's what's happening there now, those uses should be allowed. We shouldn't have to go to the zoning permit to have with a site plan, which you have to pay for. You have to pay for a special exemption application. You have to come in front of the commission for a special exemption application. All of the uses in the table that are special exemption, probably 3/4 of them should be permitted by use. Instead of an SE there, we should have a P. That would encourage small business to thrive here and be able to use their land and their property to have small businesses going on. You know, an automobile service and repair. We can look in the table at different uses that are permitted by right in many other towns that are neighboring here. And this way, we can a little bit encourage small business versus big business who comes in town with their money, with their lawyers, with their engineers, with their architects, and take over all of the industrial land.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of the text amendment? Please step forward.
Rich DeLay, 95 Cody Circle.
And if you could just move that up, Rich, you
Yep.
won't have to crouch over.
Good to go.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you again for all your hard work, and I support the proposed changes. Over the past couple of years, there's been consensus voiced by the South Windsor community and this commission that the antiquated regulations do not protect abutting residential communities from the industrial development. Most of the focus was on mega warehouses, but it is clear the regulations were lacking throughout. In the proposed regulations, buildings in industrial zones under 40,000 square feet still would not require a special exception, and the only protection for residential abutting communities is the buffer. And in response to some of the comments that were made last time, the proposed regulations contain the most minor of changes, increasing the industrial residential buffer to 75 feet from 50 feet, only if the 50-foot buffer is clearly insufficient and fails the well-crafted performance standards. In reality, the buffer is still 50 feet. So, I mean, I would love if it was 100 feet, 150 feet, but it should not, I mean, increasing it to 75 feet is something that we need to keep. This is a minor common sense change in the buffers, which give the commission a little bit more teeth to protect the abutting residential communities. And anyone that kind of characterizes this change as a threat to the South Windsor economy or business reputation it's inaccurate. For many developments, like 40,000 square foot buildings that are unprotected by special exceptions, 50 feet is clearly ineffective. And if you have any doubts to this statement, go to the South Windsor Inland Wetlands Pending Applications website and view 75 Connecticut Avenue. 40,000 square foot buildings can still be hundreds and hundreds of feet long, all right? And if you have a 50-foot buffer, we're talking about yards, rear yards of 25 feet or a side yard of 10 feet. You're putting a 24 or 40-foot building potentially 60 feet from a property. So at least increasing it to 75 feet. Should it be increased to 100? I think so, and that is in line with other communities like South Windsor in the state. I know we've looked at a few. but if you look at others, there's larger numbers. So I appreciate all the hard work, but I just want to make one last comment. When you hear the comments of some of the people today, I just wanted to remind everyone that a year ago, on March 8th, 2022, Commissioner Wagner, right here, asked an applicant if they knew their planned development would be harmful to the health of surrounding children and their families, what would they do? The applicant clearly responded, we would proceed with the development. All right here. The public and myself want the updated regulations to give you, the commission, the tools necessary to protect our residents from the small fraction of developers and designers who exhibit low moral standards in their quest for profitability. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of the text amendment? Please step forward.
Yeah, talking about the 75 Connecticut Avenue.
Excuse me, if you could introduce yourself.
My name is Robert Stoddard. I live at 10 Barber Road, South Windsor. About 75 Connecticut Boulevard. These people are talking 50 feet off of my property. They can put up a little under 27-foot building. And 50 feet, my house is only 22 feet from my property line to this property line. I think this house, this thing, you know, I mean, they're talking bumpers. When my house was built, they knew that this house was going to be built so close to this property that other than that, I cannot say anything, you know? But I would like to talk to some of these people, but thank you very much.
Okay, you signed in, Robert?
Yes, I signed my name right here.
Okay, and could you repeat your address for me, please?
Uh-huh.
Could you repeat your address?
10 Barber Road,
Okay.
South Windsor, Connecticut.
Thank you, Robert. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of the text amendment? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none, is there anyone who would like to speak against or have questions or concerns? Please step forward.
For the record, John Holozak, 39 Cody Circle. I've been a resident of the town of South Windsor for 31, almost 32 years. I'm going to keep my remarks brief. Most of you were here last week. I think some of the commissioners might have been left with the impression that I was asking for wholesale changes in the document that you had spent a lot of time drafting. I took a look at it. The two minor changes, and I'm going to hand this out here. The two minor changes had to do with really with definitions and how the Institute for Traffic Engineers treats some of these use cases. To the best of my knowledge, I'm an engineer by training and profession, but I'm not a traffic engineer, I'm not a site planner. But to the best of my knowledge, Institute for Traffic Engineers does not define a distribution center or the amount of traffic emanating from distribution center. So you don't have to rewrite the whole regulations.
Simply add the item with the green highlight in parentheses under your definitions on page 27. Just add the words including but not limited to fulfillment centers and parcel hubs. Those are both very similar, high-intensity, high-traffic uses. And if you add those to the definition of the distribution center, I checked, it carries through the whole document. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but I think that should take care of it. And then my other suggestion was 4.5.1. The entire initial paragraph was struck. And I suggested that in the future, you may have issues with one industrial development affecting another industrial development. You might want to keep just a little bit of that language. And I think the easiest way is to take your new paragraph that you've written in red, has to do with, you know, residential protections, all that sort of thing, and right at the very end of it, just move the phrase, which by design are compatible with abutting zones and uses. And that part's all set, all done. Okay, do you have enough copies? You do? Okay. All right. One more thing. I'm a numbers guy at times, not all the time, as my wife will tell you, but I decided to take a quick look around at what other towns were doing in regards to buffers. And the first thing I looked at was Farmington. I've been making trips there recently. The feel of the town, it feels a little bit, just a little bit more spread out, a little bit more buffered when you look at different things around. And so I looked up their planning and zoning regulations, and sure enough, in the industrial regulations where they come near residential, they ask for a 100-foot width in wide, okay? So then I decided to look closer to home, and in East Windsor, where industrial and residential come together, again, there's 100 feet of buffer required on the commercial industrial side. So, I mean, that's just north of here. Glastonbury's was a little bit harder to interpret. They talk about 150 feet from residential uses to industrial uses. And I copied and pasted the language there. It's a little bit tougher to sort out. But anyway, I know there's probably people in the room tonight that are too shy to come up to the microphone. So just for a show of hands, how many people here would like to see a 100-foot buffer where industrial meets residential? Please raise your hands. Thank you. And I think that concludes my, my talk tonight. I do want to say, in August of 21, about a half dozen neighbors and myself were very busy interviewing land use attorneys all over the state of Connecticut, really, from central Connecticut through to where we live. And we heard something pretty often from just about all of them. It was along the lines of, South Windsor is open for business. That's what we heard. Another one was a little bit more poignant. They said, well, the word is South Windsor has opened herself up and said, develop me. That was a little bit cruder, but my apologies. I think you see that. You see that in wetlands regulations that are 23 years old, okay? You see that, well, maybe they've been updated, but, well, no public input that I heard from. And you also see that in designing around a 10-year storm. I mean, you can't revise all the regulations, but something to think about. Tallinn does 25-year storm. It all adds up. It's cheaper because the pipes are smaller and the engineering is easier. So just keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak against or have questions or concerns?
Wayne Botha, 720 Governor's Highway. Two things. One is, I think one of the approaches you can consider is that new development should not be a burden to existing residents. So if somebody already owns a property and somebody builds a 40-foot warehouse right next to you, you shouldn't be burdened to create some sort of a buffer. That should be on the developer's side. Secondly, I understand all the angst around trying to classify a building as a warehouse, special warehouse, etc. Building owners and the purposes change over time. So I'm wondering if the regulations shouldn't just simply focus on the size of the building, not the warehouse or whether it's a storage facility or a refrigeration unit, because that could change at any time. So perhaps focus on the size of the building and the location. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak against or have questions or concerns? I see a hand in the back. Please step forward.
Hi, I'm Kathy Young, 1136 Main Street. My property abuts the industrial zone on John Fitz Boulevard, and I'm 2 houses from the corner of Governor's Highway. So it's very difficult. I just talked with the planning and zoning about lights, because they put in lights that shine in the windows. About, you know, I mean, you get noise and banging noises, and there's hopefully some way that you can sleep at night. It would be nice to have regulations, not only for the buffer zone, but also to block the lights. And today I came down Governor's Highway coming home, and there was 2 tractor trailer trucks. One as I came off Ellington Road onto Governor's, blocking the street because they're so big. And then I want to come up Belden, and like, how could I run into 2 tractor trailer trucks? And it's a narrow road. So there is a problem with directing traffic. So for me, obviously Route 5 is a lot of activity, and we want to keep the business in town. I've been in town 77 years. So I worked with planning and zoning and the town council in the 70s when we were, let's keep the activity just coming from the highway and just build the condos close to the highway, get them in and out of town quickly. So coming from a place which was beautiful farmland and tobacco land and seeing what's developed, it's incredible. And you want to still live here, but a lot of people want to move away with noise pollution, and of course it's smoggy with all the, you want to be able to live in town. And you weigh development and the money's coming in with the safety of our, I'm going to say, protecting our land and children. It's hard to have the right regulations to do this and to have the balance. Because over the years, there's been a lot of different balance. What is important to us? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, there goes that pen again. Just watch your head coming up, please. Is there anyone else who would like to speak against this application or have questions or concerns? Please step forward.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Commissioner and members of the commission. We thank you for the opportunity to be heard on this. My name is Mike Willitson. I live at 50 Belden Road. I've been a resident for 37 years, and I attempted to speak or pose some issues at a prior meeting about a year ago about the traffic impact that all of these new companies and distribution warehouses and all the other companies were having on specifically Governor's Highway and Belden Road. And I was told that this was not the proper forum for that. So I did serve on a group, or there was a group of us about 30 years ago who met with the town council when the industrial parks started to perk up and all the truck traffic started, and we came to some we ameliorated some of the conditions, but those since have fallen by the wayside on the traffic issue. So I'm not certain if it's still in because in the proposed amendments, I don't see anything in there addressing neighborhood traffic. So I'm not certain if this is the appropriate forum for me to present any concerns I might have.
Well, state what you came to state.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you very much. As I said, I've been a resident, our family, at 50 Belden Road for 37 years. Approximately 30 years ago, things started perking up in the neighborhood, a lot of truck traffic, and we were concerned about it. The quality of the surfacing of those two roads is deplorable at best. Belden Road has gotten a little bit better, but Governor's Highway is still a pretty rough area. At the time, we met with the town council in town council meetings, and different things were batted back and forth. We finally came up with, as a resolve, we had actually proposed them ending Governor's Highway and sealing it off where Newmarker comes in. I don't know if all of you are aware of that or not, where it comes in, and ending it there and blocking off the residential area from the industrial area. That didn't go, but as a result of that, we ended up with postings at all the entrances and entries about it being against the town ordinance. There was a ticket involved if 18-wheelers were found to be driving up and down those two roads with a $99 fine, and it did occur for a while. Whenever truck traffic used to perk up, we would call the prior town manager, and he would get on it, and he would call the companies, and then it would resolve itself, at least for a certain period of time. All the GPS mapping companies were contacted at the time and told, put this in your directions, that you can't travel these roads because of the restrictions that the town of South Windsor has put on truck traffic. I recently called the town manager's office and to speak to him about it, and received a telephone call back, not from him, but somebody in his office, and was told, well, they are public roads, aren't they? And this kind of dovetailed into a conversation that a resident of Belden Road had with a current police officer. He waved him over and asked him, say, you know, come on, you just saw the truck go by. We're not enforcing that ordinance anymore, even though it's still posted. There has been a extremely steady escalation of traffic on these two roads. They are single-lane roads in both directions, and will only get worse as the industrial park becomes busier. Excuse me. I have a list of all the companies. I stopped, the young lady from Main Street who just spoke talked about seeing two tractor-trailer trucks. I stopped one in the middle of the road by the synagogue this afternoon about 4:30, 5 o'clock. And I was flashing my lights, and I waved my arms, and he pulled over, and I pulled over, and we had a very amicable discussion, and I said, why are you traveling it? It's posted in numerous locations that you're not supposed to be here. Oh, well, I have a delivery on Ellington Road. And I said, where on Ellington Road? And he goes, and then I said, you know, I get it, okay? Because the ordinance, you know, the word is out. The ordinance isn't being enforced. We have no police presence whatsoever.
Yep, and
in our,
Mike, if I could, I am wondering how much longer you have, but I do want to make you aware that ordinances are dictated by the town council. The planning and zoning doesn't have any jurisdiction over ordinances.
All right. So I'll wrap this up pretty quickly. I promise. It's a late night for everybody. I get up at 4:15 every morning for the past 8-9 years, religiously. We already have garbage trucks going up and down our road. I leave my house on Belden Road and go up Governor's Highway towards Ellington Road. There's already garbage trucks coming down Governor's Highway to the place to unload. I don't know if it's a trash transfer station or what it is, All-American Waste. This goes on all day. One day I was out in my front yard, 4 trucks from East Hartford right on the side of the truck, East Hartford, going by. When I talked to the town manager, he suggested I call the town manager in East Hartford. And I said, well, I would think the weight of your office might bode a little better for us than some crazy civilian calling up and ranting and raving. I could go right down the list of all these trucks. The bus company has moved from one side of Route 5 to the other. I am not exaggerating that we now have on Monday to Friday, 30 to 40 buses of different sizes going up and down our street. And I can only imagine it's the same for Governor's Highway, if not worse, because they're going out to other schools in the town of South Windsor. I can go right, I have a whole page of companies that are going up and down all day long. I talked to, when I did call the town manager in East Hartford, because I also at the time owned a property in East Hartford, a small business building on Burnside Avenue. He told me he'd get back to me. He did get back to me, and he told me that the drivers said they'd rather come up, turn up Ellington Road, and then go to Belden, and then go down Governor's Highway, because there's no traffic lights. If they stay on Route 5, they got to stop and go, whereas it'd be very easy if they just went up Route 5, took a quick right onto Governor's Highway, and a quick left onto North, where's that, North Nutmeg or North Satellite? But this weekend, my wife and I, we walk all over town. We took a walk down, all the way down Hilton, all the way. There were 3 open houses down the end of Edgewood and Hilton. And today, when we came back, there's more for sale signs going up because of the threat of these new applications going in and the possibility that more companies might be moving in to this area. We have a speed limit. It's posted 25 miles per hour on Governor's Highway coming towards the synagogue. And once you turn onto Belden, it goes up to 30 miles an hour. Nobody abides by those. It's not even close. We have school bus drivers that exceed those speed limits on our street. And I'm out there waving my arms like a lunatic, and they wave back. And it's extremely frustrating from what our neighborhoods used to be to what they are. The developers come in, they drop their buildings in the sand, and they leave town with no thought whatsoever to the impact that it has on the neighborhoods that are being affected by these developments. And I would ask all of you to try and please be sensitive to that. I will be going to town council meetings and trying to have my voice heard there also. But it's really a dire situation on our street. It starts at 4 to 4:15 in the morning with the garbage trucks, and then it just escalates all day. We have FedEx trucks going up and down our street. FedEx is over off of Rye Street, and these aren't, neighborhood delivery trucks, but they're not 18-wheelers, but they're the big box trucks. And they're trying to take a shortcut, and they're trying to go over there. And it's just extremely, extremely frustrating. So I thank you for indulging me. It's just an expression of our frustration with the current situation, with what's going on with all this development. I understand the gentleman said earlier that your committee used to meet 46 to 48 times a week when he served on it. Well, there was probably 8,000 people in town, and there was no economic development, so the number of those meetings was probably necessary. But I would suggest now that maybe it's time to draw back a little bit and rethink where we're going with all this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak against or have questions or concerns? The gentleman with the red tie? Yes.
Hello. I spoke at the last meeting. My name's James Aldrich. I'm the owner of Aldrich Construction Company. I spoke at the last public hearing in generalities. I'm here really to talk about 5 specific issues. I'm not a developer, I'm a general contractor. I started my company in the 1980s, and I've done an awful lot of work in South Windsor. I do not build nor have ever built any of these mega warehouses. Matter of fact, in my world, I don't know any local contractors that even participated in those. I have a concern that, to a certain extent, the people I work for, local businesses, most of them family-owned, those folks are going to be collateral damage of the proposed regulation changes. From my perspective, the kind of jobs I do, I'll give you an example. I'm building a new electrical room that will take the power from the solar panels at New Way Tobacco and integrate it into the main power of the existing building. That building is 16 feet by 28 feet. It's under 500 square feet. I started working on that job in the spring of 2022, and we broke ground on it in February of 2023. I see things differently. I can't address any of these comments about large warehouses. But the projects I'm involved with, this is my concern. There's too many rules. The process for a company to get approval takes too long, and it's too expensive. There's a great need to streamline the process. The existing rules, from my perspective and my customers, have worked well over the past years. Some of the projects I've worked on are O&W Heat Treat, their addition, Total Fitness, Grillo Dental, Able Tool, all locally owned businesses. I think most of those owners live in South Windsor. The O&W Heat Treat, I think that was, from memory, 8,000 square foot addition. I think they hired 4 people, but that addition's packed with technology and machines. Total Fitness, that's a distribution center. He's got 3,000 square feet of office. He's got a 2,500 square foot gym that he let the town of South Windsor use for years for wrestling training. And then he's got I think about an 8,000 to 10,000 square foot warehouse, and there's about 3 to 4 trucks a week that come there. The owner of the firm, there's like 6 people in the office, and a lot of times the firm is the person who unloads the trucks. One thing I'd like to see in your regulations is a feedback loop. After people go through the process, the town sends them a questionnaire and asks them, is there anything that can be done to improve the process, get their opinions, also have that go out at the end of the project. I'm going to get into some specifics about the regulations that hopefully you'll consider for the projects that size I'm involved with. First thing I want to comment on is the section 6.2.4 buffers, section B.2.B. This is the planting of trees and shrubs. Currently, the rules are evergreen trees are 5 foot tall.
Could you repeat that
Yeah, sure.
again?
6.2.4 buffers.
Thank you.
Section B.2.B. Sentence begins with planting shall be staggered, clustered to achieve maximum screening after 5 years. Evergreen trees shall be changed 5 feet up to 8 feet. Some of the trees are going to 3-inch caliper. My concern is that the existing plant size is already too big. I think they should be made smaller. The trees should all be affordable, easy to plant, require limited watering, and can be planted by one person in a reasonable time. If the tree dies in the first couple of years, the replacement should be affordable. Large trees are much more expensive to plant, require much more watering and care to ensure they will live. I'm going to give you some examples. Industrial lots that abut residential wetlands. If the owner of the industrial property at 694 Nutmeg Road North, it's one of my customers, bought land to the east of their property, which is residential, why should they be mandated to plant anything since the abutting lot is 90% wetlands? It's about 7 acres. No buffer should be required to the east. To the north, there is a house lot. If plants are needed there, a hedge should be limited in size to plants that are affordable. Next example is 75 Connecticut Avenue. I put in that cul-de-sac around the year 2000. My customer bought that parcel of land at a federal bankruptcy auction. We put in that cul-de-sac, and that lot at 75 has been for sale for 22 years. They finally sold it recently to a local person. I believe he lives in South Windsor, and he wants to build a storage facility. There's no potential use you could use for that industrial land that having a storage facility, especially with the perimeter buildings facing the street, not the neighbors, and having those be used for cold storage, boats and RVs. Town wants to get RVs and boats out of people's yards. Many people that buy an RV, that's hundreds of thousands of dollars sometimes. They only want to own it for 10 years. They want it protected. What a great place to take RVs out of people's yards and park them in an industrial place in a building. And after 5 or 10 years on the RV, they probably want to sell it. And that's the cheapest way to keep it in good condition. For this owner, the land's small enough, 50-foot buffer. I just went and walked it. I also put in the walking trail there. The town wanted a walking trail. Walking trails, it's not in good condition, but there are trails all over the property. And when I put the walking trail in the year 2000, the neighbors weren't too happy about it. The walking trail is right at the border of the property. The neighbors didn't want people walking all hours of the day right in their backyard. And most of the neighbors have cleared really right up to the property line. I had mentioned last time if hedges are needed at the property line, maybe the plants, first of all, for a good hedge need plenty of sunlight. They should be planted right close to the property line. And if you planted smaller trees in size, 5 feet on center, it would take time for them to grow. But the smaller trees are much more resilient and stronger. And I went and I called up a landscaper and asked him the price for some of these plants. A 10 to 15 gallon tree costs about $900 each. And in getting this price, he said to me, how many of these do you want to plant and how easy is it to get to them when you go to plant them? I said, I can't give you good answers to that, but I'm going to say, let's say it's small quantities, and let's say there is some difficulty in getting to plant the tree. So $900, 10 to 15 gallon, a 3 to 3.5 inch caliper, 16 feet tall, is $2,225 to plant one. It takes 2 men and a machine. And how do you water that tree? How do you water it to ensure it's going to live for a year? Many of my customers, when they have to plant trees, they'd like to be able to plant them themselves. They'd like to be able to buy them and be able to carry them in their pickup truck. And trees go pretty good. Yeah, the first couple of years, it might be not the greatest coverage. So I just gave you some numbers. I went and I looked on the Home Depot website, and they sell a 2.5 quart tree, Spartan juniper, fast-growing privacy plant, $15.61 for one of those. And I asked the landscaper, what would it cost to go and plant one of those, to take care of it for the year, to water it, and to give us a warranty if it doesn't grow, you'd come back and replace it. One of those is under $250. And if you put these things 5 feet on center around the perimeter of your property, you're starting to talk about some serious money. Buffer size. For the industrial lots that my customers have, the 50-foot buffer was set 25 years ago. And people bought the land assuming the 50-foot buffer is true, okay? Changing that to 75 feet is going to cause a hardship for small landowners. Making it 75 feet, but allowing for a reduction to 50 feet also won't work, since it is awfully politically very challenging for commissions to stand up to organize opposition to any building project. Having the back of a building facing the residential property with no drive to the rear should be an automatic acceptance that a 50-foot buffer is adequate. The example I gave you before, these storage facilities for boats and RVs, people are just coming, park their car, take their RV and boat and leave. It's the lowest intensity use you can have next to residential. My next item, landscaping interior for industrial users. This is section 6.46, parking lot landscaping. Please consider waiving interior parking lot landscaping for some industrial users, 6.4.6. An example would be for small to mid-sized storage and flex space users. For these users, the interior landscaping makes it much more difficult to plow the lot in the winter, and the plants often obstruct sight lines for traffic in the parking lot that often has small trucks and vans. Landscaping dollars are more wisely spent on the outer perimeter to screen buildings from the neighbors. 310 Nutmeg Road South, a building built over 20 years ago, is a great example of this. A little side note in terms of clarity, your plant sizes in section 6.46 conflict with the size of the plants in section 6.2.4. Plant sizes 6.46 conflict with section 6.2.4. I advocate that all plant sizes should be made smaller. My last item is change in tendency at industrial buildings and getting permits for interior renovations. This type of change, in most cases, should not involve the Planning and Zoning Commission. The list of permitted uses in the planning and zoning regulations for industrial is not reflective of what exists currently in town. If tenants want to move out of a building, or if an owner wants to sell a property, a wide range of industrial users should be able to move in without triggering a time-consuming and expensive approval process of planning and zoning. Some caveats to any P&Z approval assume that the new owner user will not be making exterior renovations, the parking and exterior use is not changing, and the use will not impact the area, for example, no loud noises from operations. Some examples of occupants that should automatically be approved in the industrial zone include wholesale sales and distributors. When I use the word distributors, I'm not talking about these mega facilities, I'm saying smaller businesses. Storage facilities, nonprofit back office and storage uses, rental facilities, research facilities, business offices, equipment vehicle repair facilities, and many others. One of my customers has owned 2 large industrial buildings in town for 20 years. In spaces of 10,000 square feet or less, his past tenants have included manufacturing firms, a wholesale distributor and seller of duct tape, Radio Shack repair facility, Walgreens service department, storage for the fuel cell enterprise in town, a pharmaceutical research firm, various contractor firms, a cabinet making company, a nonprofit office that needed a lot of storage space in a small office, and other similar businesses. Most moved in without needing any facility modifications. From the outside, the only difference the public saw was the name of the company on the sign. My customers, when they have a tenant that wants to rent their building, they come to them, they want to rent it. A lot of times, if there's no building permit needed, they just move in. It's really what's happened my whole career. I think that's what happens most time.
Well, there's a zoning compliance component. Again, we check it for zoning compliance typically, and with the building official we have today, he looks for a permit for every new tenant to come in for a fit-out. So it does change over time.
Okay, so
we do have some
I've been doing this a long
checks.
time. I didn't. I know if you take out a building permit. So when you normally take out a building permit, you have to prove that the new use is in compliance with the code, and there is some grandfather exceptions. But for industrial space, most of I don't get involved with that. Tenant moves out, the owner advertises it with a realtor, the realtor comes in, they find somebody, they sign a lease, and boom, change in tenancy. In closing, for the small and medium-sized firms my company works for, the existing rules are more than ample. My suggestions make the process more user-friendly and affordable. Please consider some of the recommendations I've made to change the approval process. The regulatory burden currently for small and medium-sized businesses is very large, and these folks face a lot of external challenges and competitive pressures. Thank you for giving me this chance to speak.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak against or have questions or concerns? Lady with the hand up.
Hello, Jessica Glass, 1837 Main Street. And sorry if I sound disorganized. We're still in the middle of lambing season. And Dave and I are stewards of a historic property, a sheep farm on Old Main Street. And I love saying that. It makes me proud to be part of a long legacy of farmers and residents who made that part of South Windsor what it is. The respect for the past, use of sustainable agriculture practices to have a light touch on the land, and maintaining the property for many people to enjoy. Great view from Main Street. There's actually a picture of the farm in the town clerk's office right on the wall there. I just want to talk about some of the intangibles tonight, the quality of life, the pride of place issues. I'm reminded of when I'm feeding the sheep and I see a family or bike riders gazing out, enjoying the view, the sheepscape, the classic red barns, the open pastures. And then suddenly you hear this soul-crushing sound of trucks, engine braking to make the turn from Route 5 onto Sullivan Avenue to get to the Mobis, Vistar, Aldi, and FedEx distribution centers. And it's not only during peaceful days and moments during daytimes, it's early mornings, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, on Sunday mornings when they're loading up for the week. To say nothing of the pollution, dozens of trucks every day, and the accidents that happen on that intersection too are a real issue. So I just wonder if there's a way. I really appreciate the moratorium that you passed, and I appreciate a lot of the text amendments that you worked on clearly so hard to add to this set of regulations. I wonder if there's a way to add a requirement for noise, pollution, and traffic studies, not only at the site, proposed site, but the roads and highways leading to it. What we're experiencing all along John Fitch Boulevard and the north end of Main Street in particular is trucks that are going to distribution centers that are miles away. And we wouldn't be experiencing those noise issues and pollution and traffic there if it weren't for the distribution centers that are, I know that there were noise studies done for the Scannell properties, the Mobis and the Vistar on Sullivan Avenue, and we were told that noise was not be an issue where we live, and it's that is not true. So is that, acoustic aggression, it's a thing. And I think it was Commissioner Wagner who actually stood on someone's lawn on the north end of Main Street and said that the truck noise there was deafening. I believe that was the word you used. And that's the issue. So I just want to also add, I feel like distribution centers are, my own opinion, low-quality development. I think that South Windsor can do better with all of its amazing history, brain trust, inventiveness. Can different types of development be encouraged? And how can these regulations help that process? I think they, as I said, the text amendments that you've made go in the right direction, and I definitely would like to see more buffers for the town council, less tax abatements. I think it's okay to encourage South Windsor to be less welcoming to freight terminals and distribution centers. I think we can do better. And I know it's not the kind of scope of this commission, but As Dave said, can we get some sort of study done about what the tax income has been? Has it really been worth these 7 mega warehouses and the jobs? Have there really been that many jobs created by 7 distribution centers that are served by machines? So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak against or have questions or concerns about text amendment? Please step forward.
Hi, my name is Stacy Ramirez. I'm at 31 Barbara Road. I am a direct abutter of the 75 Connecticut Avenue project that the gentleman from Aldrich was speaking about. And one thing I would do is encourage you all to come to our neighborhood at night and during the day to see the effects of this building in our neighborhood. Right now, we have buildings behind us on South Satellite Road. I have the same issues as this woman with banging of trash cans, 2:30 in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. You can't even keep your windows open on a nice day. Then we have the buildings on Connecticut Avenue, lights shining into our house. Now you're gonna have another building, potentially, that we're gonna look at, lights shining into our house, more trash cans being banged around. And it's essentially like a feeling like we're being sandwiched in and all these buildings are just coming around us and we can't breathe. You have tons of people that use those trails. They bike on those trails. People walk their dogs in those trails. And it's just not a place for a building like that. These people say that it's too expensive for our customers, or not customers, but our, the people who want the building there to plant the trees and all that. Us as homeowners are gonna lose money on our houses that we put so much money into. Are those developers gonna buy my house at the rate that I would get today? Probably not. Before, I would be able to look outside and look at woods, beautiful woods. Now I see pink flags, red flags, application pending signs. Who wants to see that? I know they wouldn't. All they care about is the money in their pocket. They don't care about the residents. So I encourage you guys to care about the residents. Thank you.
Stacy, what was your address again?
31 Barbara Road.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak against or have questions or concerns about the text amendment? Please step forward.
Yeah, John Hawasak again from 39 Cody Circle. Just a couple of quick follow-up comments. You've heard 75 Connecticut Boulevard mentioned, and I know someone that lives over that way. They looked it up. That sale of that property went through on August 12th or so of 2022, so well after the warehouse moratorium was in effect. I thought you should be aware of that. And I also noticed when I was out for a bike ride, Sharon Lane, if you drive, it's off Hilton Drive, Sharon Lane, just drive to the end of the cul-de-sac, and you'll see what it looks like to have industrial buildings 50 feet off of residential properties. I believe those are relatively quiet buildings, but imagine if somebody was storing 55-gallon drums of chemicals there. How would you feel then? Just a thought. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak against or have questions or concerns? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none. Hearing and almost seeing none.
So hopefully I can wrap this up for everybody. For the record, I'm Mark and Merrick Kazakowski, 863 Clark Street. I came here today to speak wearing my 3 hats. First as a resident, second, as a member of the town council, and third, as a town planner with 16 years experience in municipal planning, zoning, and development. I've worked for communities where zoning regulations were used to restrict and control overdevelopment, and for communities where zoning was used as a tool to attract types of developments that the community desired. I want to thank everybody for coming out here today and participating in the process. I heard some great comments on both sides of the issue, so I'd like to thank everybody for that, and I just want to say I don't envy the Planning Zoning Commission for the decisions that they have to make sometimes. So I've read the proposal in detail, and I'm not going to comment on the merits of any specific requirement. I'd rather just make some comments more in general. When the moratorium was first proposed, I was, I admit, apprehensive, having concerns at how it could impact South Windsor, specifically how it would be perceived by prospective businesses and business owners considering to locate in town. But in that process, in that public hearing, I was swayed by comments made by Commissioner LeBlanc when he said that he felt that we weren't getting what we wanted and that developers were getting the upper hand. So I appreciated the need for the moratorium, and I looked forward to what would come from this process. A great piece of advice I'd received in the past was to, and I quote, zone for what you want. And I think I see here is a proposed regulation that zones for development that has no adverse impacts on nearby residents. The regulation requires a high threshold for the burden of proof that a proposed development would have zero impacts. Based on what I heard in this public hearing tonight and 2 weeks ago, it is clear that the proposal is supported by the residents and generally opposed by business owners in the development community. What these regulations do is create new and additional requirements on the use of the property outside of the principal operation being proposed. And what I mean by that, there are new buffer requirements, new landscape requirements, new parking and driveway requirements, all that have a significant impact on what can actually be built and what can actually function on the property. All these requirements can possibly squeeze building footprints, limit building sizes, and limit the ability to develop our industrial land. This has direct impact on our grand list growth, which has direct impact on our taxes. Lastly, there's a fear that the land may be considered over-regulated and may not be developed at all. There's a growing sentiment in South Windsor that South Windsor is getting overdeveloped, that we don't need any more development. Also, many want taxes to be low and town services to be the best they can be. The truth of the matter is you can't have really no more than two of those three. You can't have low taxes with high services and no development. Throughout this process, it reminds me why we're here and why we had this moratorium. And it came in the wake of the proposed development on Governor's Highway, where nearby residents were surprised that a tract of land that can now be developed when they were told in the past that it was undevelopable. These residents were concerned and then frightened by a proposed development and how it could impact their lives. These residents, on top of all that, then became very frustrated by the lack of concern for their well-being by the developer and its unwillingness to adjust, so they fought back. So now we have a set of regulations, assuming that they'll get approved, at least in part, that in effect have no impact on the development of that property on Governor's Highway, since any decision on that will be done in the court or through settlement. But these regulations are clearly influenced by the lessons learned in that project. It's okay to have protective regulations. It's okay to put the residents first. It's wise to zone for what we want. But in doing so, we need someone to be an advocate for South Windsor, for our businesses and our landowners, who actively recruits businesses and jobs and opportunities to grow our grand list. We need someone to help smooth things over for people who look at our regulations and then want to quickly look somewhere else. We don't have that right now. If we, as a town, as a commission, wants to regulate to this degree, we have to have a dedicated full-time economic development advocate for South Windsor to help us continue to move forward. And so this was just more than a pitch for this new position that's being proposed in the budget, but I just want to recognize that managing growth in our town requires the effort of the Planning and Zoning Commission, as well as the town council, town staff, and the various boards and commissions. And all of us have to work within our capacities to do what's best for the town. And I just want to thank you and the commission and staff for doing your part. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak against or have questions or concerns regarding these text amendments? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none, we'll turn to commissioners. Commissioner Vatiri.
One comment is that I appreciate everybody putting the time and effort that you put into all these comments. I mean, you made many, many good points. We've spent the last year going through over and over and over discussing all of these. In a perfect world, I'm sure that we could stop time and rewrite everything from the beginning and make it all work. Given us a lot to think about. Thank you.
Commissioner Cavagnaro.
Thank you. I do have a few comments and questions, at least going through this. And first, before I even get into that, thank you so much, everyone, for showing up again. I was starting to miss the chairs filled with people, and I'm delighted to see some happy faces here today. So going through some of my comments and at least some clarifications within our own regulations, going with some comments made earlier, I'm under the assumption that, of course, prior applications and current buildings, are while they are not subject to these regulations, if they do want to expand or, work on their building, they'll have to come forward with a special exception if they're within the buffer. That is correct, right?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
So for example, someone mentioned I think the Aldi building, for example, that's right next to a bunch of land that is zoned residential. It is within the buffer. If they do want to, again, a hypothetical, if they want to come in with an application to expand their building, it would have to be a special exception.
You have to apply under the current regulations. So yes, if a distribution facility requires a special exception approval, and that's what they're doing in addition to it. There's a couple different ways under zoning it potentially would looked at. I mean, you could be making them a non-conforming use by them no longer being the distance. And again, I don't really like to use Aldi's for an example because I don't really know what their distance is. They may qualify, without looking at it closely. But let's just say there's a distribution facility right next to a residential zone. That has become non-conforming if we adopt a regulation that says all of them have to be a certain distance. So if someone like that wants to expand, they would go to a zoning board of appeals for the expansion of a non-conforming use. If they were far enough away, met the 500 feet, and they wanted to expand, they could come in for a special exception under your zoning regulations. So it's very much situational, but there would be one of two processes forward, unless, so your question is, if you want to exempt them from needing to come back to you, is that what you're trying to get
No,
at?
I was just
you're
clarifying
wondering what the
whether,
process is.
yes.
Yeah. So again, if it was not conforming within being the 500-foot distance, that building would now be a non-conforming use, right? That's how uses become non-conforming. The regulations no longer support them. So if someone wanted to expand a non-conforming use, that's the Zoning Board of Appeals. One of the roles they do is expand non-conforming uses. Or get a variance to make that use now a legal use. That would be another avenue. Or if the expansion was going to be further than 500 feet away, just that it's a very large facility or whatever, it would come to this commission under a special exception. So a couple different scenarios that could happen.
All right, thank you. My next topic or question, I guess, is something I've thought about for a while, and I wasn't sure whether or not South Windsor or any town could do this in this matter. And I say it because if we look at the buffer map or the distance setback for types of use map on page 8 of the presentation, really the map that's right down there, while it does go around everything in South Windsor, I notice on the south end of it, it does not accommodate for any type of buffer against the town line. And, while I know, we are elected to, represent South Windsor in that fact, I know on the other side of the town line, it is residential. I'm not sure if we have any ground or area, I should say, to sort of have a setback down there. I think that's been the only, I guess one thing I would like to see change with this, if we could have a setback within the southern town line as well to extend against the residential that is in the East Hartford border within South Windsor, because it is our job to not only hear feedback from residents, but also realize, where we are in the community. And, we do have industrial in the corridor area that is right next to residential in East Hartford. And so that was one of my main points. I'm hoping we could at least look into that. And I'm going to keep talking and go into the next point of when I say keep talking about this, I am in favor of at least looking over these regulations one more time. And what I mean by that essentially is I'm not sure if it'd be possible to get our warehouse committee back together for 1 or 2 meetings, go over what we've heard tonight, in a community process that we've done tonight. Go over, see what changes we do want to make. So, for example, if we want to look at the special exception regulations that was mentioned earlier, if we want to do that or not, because as someone mentioned, they haven't been looked at in a very long time. I'm not sure if that's something we want to do, and I raise that up to the commission to decide. But I guess for me, I would be in favor of at least extending it for a month or two to look at it, see if anything else we need to add to it. To finalize, to put the cherry on top, if we say. I guess the very last comment I have tonight, and someone mentioned it, I cannot recall what page it was, but if I mention it, requiring evergreen trees as the buffer. Is there a reason why we have it as evergreen trees? Is it just because of they provide a good natural buffer, or and I see it's in black text, so I assume it's been like that for a while. I'm just curious why we have it as evergreen.
Well, evergreens typically are a good screening tree, but I think we're trying to design the buffer with some flexibility so that, we're not dictating it so much. But evergreens typically are used in buffer plantings because they are a good screening tree.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, I'll just finish off quickly again saying that, I would be in favor of extending it for a month just to look at what we have, as it expires at the end of April. So we do have 1 month left of this. Like I said, I hope we could get the warehouse committee back together, 1 or 2 meetings, review what was sort of said tonight and see if we want to incorporate anything else. We've gotten a lot of great feedback because we have a lot of great citizens in South Windsor. So I'm hoping we can at least have a chance to sort of review that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner LeBlanc.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks everyone for coming out tonight. We had some good constructive criticism and comments. It's one of these things where I feel that you mentioned that, talking earlier, but I am a proponent for control. I feel that these zoning regulations were definitely outdated and this needed to be done. There was a lot of work that went behind this, and certainly I am listening to everybody's comments, and there's still some work that needs to be done, and the final product, I believe, will be good. But it's one of these things where I do believe as a commission, we need to serve the town well, and we need to have updated regulations. I am also a resident here. I lived here since 1979. And I look at it from a residential concern, and this certainly is something that needed to be done. And we'll get there, and I appreciate the input.
Thank you. Our secretary reminded me we have a few letters to read into the record, so I'll turn to Commissioner Wagner for those.
Thank you. So this is from Virginia McCrow. Dear Chairman Pesaconis, I regret I cannot attend the hearing this evening on the Warehouse Distribution Center truck and freight terminal regulations. First, I congratulate you all on undertaking the complex task of updating past regulations in an attempt to better protect the residents of South Windsor. I live on the northern end of Main Street and was chair of the Historic District Commission for 20 years. I have previously expressed my dismay at the increased truck traffic in the last 15 years, with now 5 and soon to be 6 major facilities emptying trucks onto Sullivan Avenue. The traffic light at the intersection with Route 5 causing trucks to stop and start and often using jake braking makes life in this beautiful historic neighborhood depressing. The noise is invasive with no apparent cure, and the site of the structures must be shielded from view with berms, trees, and landscaping. This letter is largely a lament that the industrially zoned land often abuts residential properties, and that the initial planning or lack thereof years ago in South Windsor missed an opportunity to appreciate how intrusive the placement of industrial land can appear today. But in looking to the future, I would like the Commission to consider, number one, extending the period of the moratorium for the proposed 4 months. Number two, coordinate with the anticipated plan of Conservation and Development team to determine, as suggested in Ms. Kerrigan's initial request for a moratorium, what the actual tax revenue after abatements actually is from warehouses, et cetera. Number three, are there other kinds of construction in industrial zones that would be more agreeable and provide adequate tax support to the town? Number four, not require that solar panels be shielded from view as stated in the draft regulations. Number five, require that industrial roofs be constructed with the strength to accept solar panels. Number six, can the planning and zoning in league with the POCD research trends in national commerce? We have seen the impact of the pandemic, inflation, and transportation on malls, lifestyle centers, fulfillment centers, and even Amazon, leaving local residents with vacant storefronts and empty buildings. I understand the stresses you face with pressure from developers, pressure from town officials wanting to avoid lawsuits, and complaints from residents. You've made progress on regulations for the development in South Windsor, but I would ask that your first consideration in any of these relaxation of these regulations, if not further tightening of regulations, be the quality of life for all residents living with these regulations. This is a letter from Brian Faraci. Dear Planning and Zoning Commission, I have read through the proposed revisions to the zoning regulations for warehouses and other large structures. I agree with the increased buffers to help separate residential areas from industrial ones, as well as increased screening. I do not, however, agree with changing zoning from permitted use to special exception for some of these large structures. The current regulations work well when followed, and I see no reason to make it more difficult to get things built in town. I also do not agree with the proposed 4-month warehouse moratorium extension. The moratorium should be ended, and South Windsor should once again be open to warehouse and other proposals. This letter is a little more complicated because there's information in the letter and some very specific comments attached to Chairman Pasaconis' presentation. And this is a letter from Stephen Gretsch. It's addressed to Chairman Pasaconis. Good morning, afternoon, and evening. First and foremost, I would like to commend and express appreciation for the tireless and thankless efforts by the committee and the community. In the past 2 to 3 years, the town of South Windsor has recognized that there are currently some deficiencies within the structure of the current planning and zoning regulations. A couple of quick things that should come to mind when setting this Herculean task. What is the strongest characteristic of South Windsor, and who does South Windsor want to be upon maturation? In the past few weeks, I have reviewed some similar Connecticut towns with zoning regulations. Most of the ones I looked at were similar in demographics to South Windsor. Over the past years, I have also reviewed several in several states. The protections being put in place need to ensure the integrity of the town's attributes while providing a framework for progressive growth. While the changes in the text are a step in the right direction, they are no way near completion. Attached is a marked up copy of some additional changes to consider. I apologize because I have not had time to dedicate due to my profession. But as a taxpayer in this community, I've seen many considerations for the taxpayers' wants and needs go by the wayside. Some key takeaways that may be in the attached markup PDF and some additional that are not there. Commercial and, number one, commercial and residential zones should be separated by a roadway. Number two, nothing should be built within 200 feet of any residential property, especially a commercial entity that is an immediate threat to safety, health, and property values of the tax-paying residents. Number three, there are 50 commercial properties that are currently unoccupied in South Windsor. Do we need to tear down pristine open land and build more without addressing the unoccupied? Number four, when I hear developers speak to the fact that the reputation of South Windsor is at stake, I look to the developers speaking. Keep in mind, the developers make their money and leave after a project is complete. It is the town that has to pay for the additional infrastructure, loss of environment, lower property values, and lessen quality of life. Number five, monetary and sanctionary penalties should be in place for developers presenting less than accurate plans, alleged expert reporting, and mail intent to the community. Mall intent. As I said earlier, I believe this is truly a great start, with more work to be done to address the issues aforementioned. Oh, an additional note, instead of the town looking to buy properties like 8 Collins Lane, they should look to purchase properties like 25 Talbot and 75 Connecticut Avenue and preserve the pristine open space. The two mentioned would increase home values and quality of life instead of reducing home values and burden to infrastructure. And then he had comments on the presentation. He suggested within the mission statement should be the goal of the Planning and Zoning Commission to ultimately serve the needs of tax-paying residents, to act as protectorate of natural resources while defining a planned environment for growth and a grand list without disturbing the town's unique characteristics. Here's a comment on considerations for the subcommittee, and there's a bullet that says the size of the building and a number of dock doors. Fourth bullet point, effective immediate community being considered for development to include health, safety, and wellness risks. Penalties should be in place for the design firms and developers submitting less than accurate reporting, e.g. example, traffic studies, wildlife studies. Any claimed expert reporting must be vetted for accuracy. Penalties should include fines and access to during buildings to the town's period of time. He had a chart which had various intensities. I think some of you commented on that. On low intensity, climate control and cold storage require chemicals as refrigerant that cause a risk to the general public. Buffer zone should be increased to 250 feet between residential and commercial. The only time a consideration can be made is if a roadway separates. Comment on the types of facilities and definitions. Again, the 250-foot recommendation. Storage facilities, the last line, no minimum distance should be corrected to all applicable buffer zone between residential and commercial, a minimum 250 feet or a roadway. And the warehouse, last line of no minimum distance should be corrected to all applicable buffer zone between residential and commercial, a minimum of 250 feet or a roadway. Distribution center, last line of no minimum distance should be corrected to all applicable buffer zone between residential and commercial, a minimum of 250 feet or a roadway. And the types of facility definitions, he has a couple comments which, without reading the whole definition, it's, I think, hard to interpret. But all the facilities must have a 2-lane and a single direction roadway to alleviate disruptive traffic practices. I think I have covered, oops, one more. He's asking for monetary penalties of various amounts on this one. The commissioners can look at that themselves. And it says absolutely no buffer less than 250 feet unless a roadway separates a division between commercial and residential zone. He's commenting on some of the diagrams. For the diagram above the commission, common sense should prevail. The buffer zone is too short. The planned landscaping does not even remotely benefit the aesthetics of the surrounding environment. A couple of similar comments. And now he talks about types of buffer designs, section D, crop pollinator habitat. Describes how buffers should be 1,000 feet from crops, but does not address how human tissue and organs are more vulnerable than crops. He's talking about screening requirements, look at closer. Currently, a building passes through P&Z. There are no replications for maintaining what was submitted. Okay.
Okay, does that complete all the letters to be read into?
I believe so, yeah, I got confirmation from Ms. Light.
Yeah, okay. Would you like to do your commissioner comments now?
Sure. First of all, I think a number of these comments had to do with enforcement issues. There's a stream from Sullivan Avenue that's apparently causing problems downstream, and maybe the detention basins are not working properly. So I would suggest maybe we have engineering look at those. It's not something we can put in the regulations, but it's an important issue. Several people mentioned dumpster noise, and there are in our noise regulations impulse rules. So when a dumpster is dropped, it's an impulse. So maybe we could get someone to come out and make some measurements of what's actually happening on the property lines when these dumpsters are being dropped.
I'll have to look at that. They may be exempt. I don't really know, but we'll have to look at it.
Okay.
Again, noise is handled through the health department. They are the ones that measure noise, but I can certainly bring it up.
Okay. The lighting, there was a mention of some lighting issues. I don't know whether, I think it was Kathy Young mentioned that. Maybe she could talk to you separately. And I don't know what some of these buildings have lighting that was from earlier versions of our regulations, so I don't know whether there's anything we can do about that, but they shouldn't be shining into people's houses. And I think if they're really good businesses, they might be happy to make a few corrections, whether it's required by the regulations or not. So let's get some communication. Mr. Halasek talked about defining fulfillment center, but it's actually defined in one of the definitions, so I think, but on the other, yeah, there's also parcel hub is included in one of the definitions, so maybe look back. All right, now these are me looking at the regulations. I agree that special exceptions cause a lot of extra work. I'm not sure I know how to get around it because the goal of the special exceptions was to, in some cases, change the way when we have a site plan approval, that means that basically if the site plan conforms to regulations, we have to approve it, which means if there's some judgments we'd like to make, the only judgment we can make is whether it conforms to the regulations. The advantage of the special exception is it gives some judgment. So especially in the case of a large facility being built near a residential zone, I think we need some of these special exceptions. I have a formatting suggestion. I appreciate the way you consolidated all the automobile information. The one thing that didn't get consolidated was the EVSE. Okay. And my suggestion for that is maybe put in front of each of those, the word affordable or automotive uses, colon, and then the specific thing, and then they'd all sort alphabetically in the right place. And the same thing with the warehouse uses. Warehouse uses fulfillment center, warehouse uses distribution center. That would get them all clustered together. And I think it's very confusing to try to sort out which of these actually applies. On page 4, you do have the EVSE is still in there. It's been in there for a long time. I wonder if we shouldn't say EVSE is permitted as an accessory use in all zones, even though that's stated elsewhere. Page 4, 3/4 of the way down. Just had a.
I'm sorry, you're suggesting to add that it's accessory use in any zone? Is that what you're
I
suggesting?
think that's true, right?
It is true, yes.
Yeah, so just to
Okay.
clarify that, it's a little, that section there is actually about someone who wants to go and build a big EVSE charging facility, okay, an electric car charging facility, but anybody can put an electric charger in their parking lot. The note at the bottom of table 411A on page 7, I think there's been several comments on that. I recommend deleting it. It says, note that in the GC zone, buildings in excess of 40,000 square feet, parking in excess of 50 cars, and non-bank drive-in facilities require a special exception approval. I mean, that kind of hits you at the bottom, and I've in the past advocated getting rid of that. I don't know how other people feel. And I really appreciate all the work you did in trying to include all our comments. I still feel like, let's see, we had a comment from one of the commenters, now I forget who, that the 8-foot-high trees are unaffordable. I guess. And then the other comment I thought was interesting was sometimes you have a property on the other side, even though it's a residential zone, there's a big wetland there. So maybe we should allow for an allowance for unbuildable property on the other side, so you could maybe reduce a buffer if there's a, 400 feet of wetland on the other side of the border.
My only concern, though, Steve, is, as the residents pointed out tonight, is a lot of them were told at one point that a certain lot was unbuildable.
Mm-hmm.
And if we, if you want to call it dummy down the regs for that purpose.
Well, maybe we could do it with just wetlands. I don't know. And even that, it's just a suggestion. Other people can comment on that. I'm beginning to regret even mentioning solar panels, but because, as you know, I really like them and I think they're beautiful. But I did try to put some wording in dealing with solar panels among the equipment on the roof of some of these flat roof buildings. But I had another type wording maybe that we could put on page 19. Screening shall be adequate to screen immediate or potential future solar panel installation. Buildings constructed prior to the date of these regulations are not subject to solar panel screening. So anyway, if you've got a building now that doesn't have the right parapet and you want to put solar on it, you shouldn't be restricted from putting solar on that building. On the other hand, when you're designing a new building, the parapet should be big enough to allow for some solar to be added someday. page 22, I think you had a note that said staff would recommend reduce the additional parking for 2 shifts to 20%. I agree with that. The perimeter road thing on page 23, section I. Oh, let me go back up. At the bottom of section H on page 23, there's a comment about ADA requirements, but shouldn't that be moved up to section G, that sentence? Okay. So we have perimeter circulation road in section I, or paragraph I. I'm thinking of one particular site plan we looked at where the boundary of the usable land was so strange that you don't really want a true perimeter road, even with a little employee parking allowed. So,
It's, sometimes those are driven by fire requirements.
Yeah.
If a building's not sprinkler and they feel they need access around the building, they're going to request a perimeter road. So sometimes they come from other directions.
So one option is delete this thing entirely. The other option is to say a circulation road shall be designed with an unobstructed access road. Let's see. Some kind of an unobstructed circulation road going around the property. But you also commented, I think in the previous meeting, that the fire marshal is going to make sure that the trucks can get around. In terms of the convenience of driving around in the parking lot, that's kind of the property owner's problem. If the fire department is happy or the fire marshal's happy, maybe we don't need it. Again, I'm listening to other people if they have an opinion on that. I heard a comment on page 25, section D, that the sizes of the trees were not consistent with 624. Maybe we can go back and look at that. I didn't have time to do that. And those are all of my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner Dexter.
Michelle, I have a question, because it's been mentioned by a few of my fellow commissioners that we need some more discussion, whether it's through the subcommittee, because maybe we do vote on a 4-month or some period of moratorium beyond end of April. Is the process then for us to have those conversations to close the public hearing so we can talk about it?
It's a little bit different when it's a commission-sponsored amendment. But my recommendation would be, if you want to get the subcommittee back together, my recommendation would be to do some kind of action for an extension. We can kind of figure out timing of that. And then what would happen is the subcommittee would come back together, tweak the regulation, whatever, and then we'd go back through the process of the public hearing. We'd send it to CROG again. So we'd want to build in some time for a 35-day review at CROG. If there's some significant changes, but to me, that's the cleanest way to do it. And that way, we've closed off where we are. We've got all this feedback. The committee gets together the couple times that they want to. We'll start it over again. That would be my recommendation.
Thank you for explaining all that. I think it's important for us all to know that, and I kind of would like to see us go in that direction. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay, Commissioner Carey.
Well, I wanted to thank everybody who came and gave us feedback. Appreciate it. I think it was really helpful. I had one thing before the meeting, so I'll just mention it, and it was the solar panels. I really think we should remove them from this regulation. And I'll tell you why. The building I work in got all kinds of awards, and their solar panels are on the side of the building. And we've received national awards for them. You don't notice them. You probably have all driven past this building a million times on 84. And the solar panels are out there. They kind of look like architecture of the building. So I just think there's too much interest in solar panels.
I'm not totally attached to that idea, so I'm listening and happy to hear your point of view on that.
Is that it? Okay, Commissioner Bernstein.
So earlier, there was a comment made that it seemed like South Windsor didn't have a strategy, and it occurs to me that there could be a number of people that feel that way, so I wanted to set the record straight. There's two parallel paths working. One is under the town council, where they're doing some strategic planning, and Councilor Kozakowski can speak more to that if anyone is interested. By the way, I thought your comments were terrific. I thought there was a lot of wisdom in what you said, and from time to time we can all use a dose of wisdom. The other thing is the Planning and Zoning Commission is updating our Plan of Conservation and Development, which has to be updated every 10 years, and within that there is strategic planning. So please know that there is a lot of effort and time being put into strategic planning to make sure that we are moving in a positive direction. I think in the interest of time, I'm going to stop there and turn it back to the chair, because I do know we have other things on the agenda tonight.
Yeah, thank you very much. And there is a lot of input here that we've received and continue to receive. As far as ending the public hearing and possibly going back to committee, I understand what you're saying. But at this point, I think the committee's job was to address the overall regulations. But I kind of feel we've gotten it down close to where we need to be. And we could get the committee back together again, which is 3 individuals, and still not get it to where it needs to be because of changes from the commissioners. So just my opinion is I feel that any changes should be our whole group. And if we have to work at it in a public hearing or discussion, I feel that's probably the best way to go. I'm not saying we can't do it the way Michelle said. It's just a different avenue to do it. So I'm going to get into a few of my comments, and I'm a little bit questioning exactly how we should move forward, because there is so much more that should be said. And, you know, if we go to we end our public hearing, and I'm going to ask to extend the meeting at 10 o'clock so that we can address these other issues and we can get them off our plate at this time, because it's easier to clear things out and move forward in a positive direction. So I'm feeling that we need to leave the public hearing open. And just as far as our regulations and the timeframes and everything, I believe you stated in the past that since we are the applicant, we can have...
You don't have a time frame. You have to act.
Right.
That's correct.
Okay. So I don't know if that's something we should talk about right now so that we know how we're going forward. I think that would be a better discussion than me running through all my stuff right now and blowing 15, 20 minutes. So I'll open the floor to discussion from commissioners. If Commissioner Bernstein?
So, as a member of the subcommittee, along with you and Michael, I totally agree that going forward, it would be best done as a full committee. I mean, I'm generally not a fan of the more the better, because it's, you know, it's a committee and you have a whole lot of opinions when you're dealing with a committee. But in this case, everyone is so close to it and we have a lot of good input here and a lot of good feedback from the public. I would be all for that. And I mean, Michael, do you?
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I took a lot of notes and everybody came up and spoke. There were some good comments, and I think as a group, when you look at it collectively, you have some fresh ideas. I think we have our arms around it, but we just need to fine tune everything.
Commissioner Wagner?
Yeah, I guess I would see closing the public hearing and then having a very lengthy discussion among ourselves of resolving all this input. I mean, I think we've gotten some terrific input. I think we're in a position where we can, you know, go line by line and address that in our discussion section. I don't think, I mean, it's always nice to hear more from the public, but I think maybe we've heard a wide range of comments and suggestions, and I think it's our job to go process them, and the mechanism to do that is in our discussion.
Okay. And I understand that logic, and we could deliberate. My concern is our next item, and we're not under time restraints with public hearing as far as how late we go tonight, but our constraints are extending so that we could do the other business. If we were to close the public hearing, I still have my input that I wanted to provide, and I'm not trying to delay the length or make the meeting longer than it could be. I'm just a little bit unsure how to.
Well, because of the hour, I'll just throw out one scenario. We could keep the hearing open until our next meeting, which is April 11th, for the commission to finish their comments.
Yep.
And then close it, and like Commissioner Wagner suggested, the 25th happens to be a pretty open meeting for you. We could put it on the 25th for deliberations.
Okay.
That is a scenario that could work, keeping it open so that you can get some more comment on the record. Because again, it's like, I would encourage you to take up your next public hearing, close that, and take action on that so that we don't have any lapse in timing of regulation.
Yep, okay. I appreciate that, thank you. So, just so we can move forward, I would entertain a motion to continue the public hearing to is it our second meeting in April?
Yes, correct. April 11th would be your second Tuesday. It would be the first meeting in April, I'm sorry. The first meeting in April is April 11th.
Okay.
And then this meeting on April 25th could be a deliberation.
I make a motion that we extend the public hearing to April 11th.
Okay, we have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of extending the public hearing, keeping it open until April 11th, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, our next item is, our last item for public hearing is the zoning text amendment, extending it for 4 months. That is how it was advertised. I know with our other moratorium that we did it for a shorter amount. But this one seems a little bit more complicated, and there's a lot of issues that are still open to the commissioners. I think Alan had mentioned maybe 2 months. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I'm generally in favor of anything that's 1 or 2 months. I don't want to have it go on any longer than it needs to. But if we need it to be an extra month or two, I'm fine with that. I just don't feel if we do 4 months, again, I'm not entirely sure. I'd be a little bit skeptical of having it be a little bit too long. But of course, on the other hand, we do have the chance to come back maybe a month into it and then remove it altogether if we get our work done earlier. So again, it's up to the commission. That's just my thought on it.
Yeah, and just as part of that, don't forget the 15-day notice, which, you know, if we did have to re-advertise, that's a 35-day period, correct?
Yeah, but the way we're talking right now, I'm not sure we would need to, but yeah, you have 35 days to CROG if you have a new text amendment.
Right.
Yeah.
Commissioner LeBlanc?
Yeah, I was going to say, I'd suggest that we go with the 4 months, and if we finish within the time frame, we all look good.
Okay.
Thank you.
If you do like your residential, you did, so.
Okay. Well, at this time, I'll entertain a motion if somebody's, Commissioner Wagner?
Well, it is a public hearing.
Oh, yeah, huh? Okay, thank you for pointing that out to me. It's getting late. We do have the public hearing. Michelle, did you have anything else you want to?
No, I don't.
Okay, so I turned to town staff. Now I'm going to turn to the public. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of this text amendment? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none. Is there anyone who would like to speak against or have questions or concerns about this zoning text amendment to extend for 4 months? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none, I'll turn to commissioners. Commissioner Bernstein, Commissioner Carey, Commissioner Dexter, Commissioner Wagner, Commissioner LeBlanc, Commissioner Cavagnaro, Commissioner Vatiri, and I don't have any. So now I would entertain a motion to extend for 4 months. Oh, yeah, okay. Meet the
He's
next
just trying to
chairman
get out
of
of
Planning
here.
and Zoning. Okay. If there's no further input, everybody's all set. We'll close the public hearing for this at 10:03 p.m. and we'll take it up under our deliberations. Let's see.
I do
Yes.
believe we
Okay.
have to extend the meeting now. It's after 10 p.m. Because
Yes.
now we're entering the regular meeting.
Are you making a motion?
What time do we want to go till?
Pardon me?
What time did we want to go till? Did we want to go to till 10:30, 10:45?
I would
I'm fine
say,
with either or.
I would say we extend it to complete business. I think that's the easiest way. Is
Okay.
that fine, Michelle, you think? Okay,
Move we extend the meeting until we complete business.
okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we are moving into our calling the regular meeting to order. First item is public participation. Is there anybody from the public who would like to speak on something that is not on our agenda tonight? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none. We'll go into approval of the minutes. Did anybody have any questions, comments, concerns about the minutes? If not, we could accept those minutes by consensus. Agreed?
Do have a quick comment. Since I myself was not in attendance for that meeting, would I be a part of that consensus, or should I say I abstain?
Excuse me, we're still trying to conduct business, so if you could, please take any conversations out into the foyer. Thank you. Sorry, Commissioner Cavagnaro.
Yeah, my quick comment was, would I be a part of that consensus if I was absent from the meeting that we're approving the minutes for? Like, should I say I abstain, or?
You can say you're abstaining.
Okay, so I abstain from the consensus.
Okay. Did you have a concern that you wanted to voice, or?
No, I just thought it was regular procedure if we were not at the meeting to abstain from the minutes.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So now we are at new business. We have application 23-02P. Michelle, is there any additional?
No, you should have approval condition suggestions.
I'll do it. I would like to move to approve application 23-02P, Villa of Lebanon Storage Temporary and Conditional Permit. This is for the storage of food truck vehicles at 785 John Fitch Boulevard. We have our standard approval conditions. There is a bond in the amount of $3,000, which is required to ensure compliance with the erosion and sediment control measures. And the permit will expire on March 28th, 2025, and will have to be renewed at that time.
Did you read number 3?
Number 1, I'll read number 1. The storage area is limited to 8 food trucks, trailers, and 2 storage containers, and must be accessed through the adjacent lot to the south at 797 John Fitch Boulevard.
And
Second.
You got number 3? I'm sorry. I just want to make sure.
Right. And all the bonds must be in one of the forms described in the enclosed bond policy.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, our next item on our agenda is application 2307P, Poulin Interior Lot. Michelle, anything else you want to
No,
mention?
nothing on that, nope.
Okay.
Actually, I apologize. The only thing I didn't include on the approval conditions is the requirement that the property to the west has to have the deed rewritten with the new property boundary in it. So the land that's being deeded needs to be a new deed. So I will make that approval condition number 10.
Okay.
A new deed is required for 432 Strong Road.
A new deed is required for,
What happens if we don't have them combined, the assessor ends up with 2 parcels of lands out there that are kind of floating in space. So we require them to be combined when a lot line revision occurs.
what numbers, what was the number?
Number 10, I think, on your list, right? I gave you one.
Number 10 on, which road?
So on your approval condition list, it's going to be required for 432 Strong Road, which is the Poulin property. He is acquiring
okay,
4 of the
okay.
acres, yeah.
Number 10.
I'm happy to make a motion.
Yep, please.
I move approval of application 2307P, Poulin Interior Lot. This is, approval is for a modification to,
To 1?
It's to the special exception and the site plan, modifications to both of
okay,
those.
to the special exception and site plan. Drainage and construction for the subdivision is subject to approval of the town engineer. Let's see, I think these are all lots must be serviced by septic systems. Septic system final design must be submitted to and approved by the environmental health officer prior to issuance of permits. Water shall be supplied to this subdivision by wells. Footing drains are required for each house prior to the building of any structure on a lot. A topographic map drawn to a scale of 1 inch to 40 feet shall be submitted for each lot in the subdivision, showing the proposed contours, elevations, and location of footing drains. No building permits will be issued until the proposed contours, floor elevations, and location of footing drains have been approved by the town engineer. Let's see, I think 6 is a standard condition, 7 is a standard condition, 8 is a standard condition, 9 is a standard condition, and then number 10 is a new deed is required for 432 Strong Road.
That's correct? Okay. Okay, we have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion, questions, comments? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Michelle, at the end it says standard Mylar.
That's really just our notes for the letter that we do.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Have a great night. Yep. Okay, our next item, turning the page. Number 3 has been continued, so number 4, we closed the public hearing. Is there, Commissioner Wagner?
I do have something I can give you. I based it on a 4-month date, if that's.
Okay.
Okay.
It's better if you write it than I make it up. I move we approve the PCC-sponsored warehouse moratorium extension. The PCC proposed to extend the moratorium for 4 months to continue updating the regulations until August 22, 2023. The Planning and Zoning Commission finds that the zone text is in conformance with the Plan of Conservation and Development. The effective date of the zone text amendment is April 14, 2023.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing in, Commissioner Viteri?
I really would favor 2 months instead of 4 because this seems like it could just keep dragging on and on and on, but that's just my personal feeling at this point.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And, you know, with having the public hearing open, I understand what you mean. Commissioner Dexter?
But if we finish in 2 months, then we're done, right? We don't have to go to 4.
Right.
Yeah, the text amendment that we didn't act on has in it ending the moratorium. One of the provisions of that, like the last time.
Right.
As soon as we pass this thing, we'll override.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so that actually works out, right?
Right.
Yeah, I'm thinking that the 4 months is more than adequate, and I'm thinking we'll finish earlier. I always take the stance that it's just, I'm looking at it from contract time and things like that from my old employment. If you don't give enough time, then you need more time, you gotta ask for it again. So best thing to do is cover it, finish it early, and you have the time to do it.
Okay.
See, and I look at it kind of if we extend it for 2 months and give ourselves a really an incentive to get there for the 2 months, and then if it comes to 2 months from now, we need to extend it another month, then we extend it another month. I just hate to leave it so that, you know, okay, we've got 4 months, so let's just, you know, not have the same sense of urgency. That's just me. I'd rather go 2 months and then another month if we have to.
The problem is you can't just extend it. You have to go through the entire notification. So the moratorium would expire, and then we would spend another couple months extending it.
How would it expire if what we're doing right now is just extending it now?
Well, if we made it,
Why couldn't we do that again?
If we made it 2 months.
So we have to go through CROG again?
You'd have to go through a text amendment again, so you'd have to have a 35-day notice of period. So if you only did it 2 months and you think you needed it again, you'd notify CROG again, you'd have to
Yeah.
go through a public hearing process again. So this is a text amendment, so anytime you are changing it, it's a text amendment. So you can't, so I understand what you're saying. I guess I can only say is we didn't take that long when we extended the moratorium on the residential because we wanted to get done. You know, I think if we target an April meeting, hopefully we can finish in April, and we can lift it as soon as we, you know, write a regulation.
I do think it's everybody's intention to get this done as soon as possible. Commissioner Cavagnaro?
Yeah, I will have to agree with the majority here. I think myself 12 months ago, I think I would be a bit skeptical of us finishing within the time frame, but we've proven that we can finish before the finish line, if you will, with the residential moratorium and the regulations. I trust if we do a 4-month moratorium, we can potentially come back in 2 months and, go to the finish line then. And of course, the other product of this is, if we do a month and then a month and a month, there's so many obstacles that we have to jump through. And so understanding all and every single obstacle that we'd have to go through, I'm in favor of doing 4 months. I trust that we can come back in 2 months with something. We've proven it this year alone that we've been able to finish before our deadline that we're setting for ourselves. So with that, still somewhat hesitant, but I will vote for a 4-month moratorium.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who? Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any more discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor of the motion as stated at 4 months, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Roll call, please.
A new microphone.
I think somebody's not plugged in.
Okay. Carrie? Oh, she's not sitting. I'm sorry, Bernstein?
Aye.
Dexter?
Aye.
Wagner? Aye. LeBlanc?
Aye.
Cavanero?
Aye.
Viteri?
No.
Pesiconis?
Aye.
It-
So we have 6 in favor, 1 against. Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Where's my- Does that complete our business?
Bonds?
Oh,
No
okay.
bonds. No bonds.
Yep.
No,
Okay, no bonds?
no bonds.
Okay, so I believe that completes our business,
Yep.
and a motion to adjourn would be in order.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion to adjourn, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone.